everyone, goddesses, ladies, women, to the Sacred Body Summit. Reclaim your feminine power. We're so excited to have this fun day. Thank you for choosing to spend the day with us. We have 7 amazing speakers. Our first speaker is Meloney Hudson, who is also the co-producer of this event and the inspiration behind this. So welcome, Meloney Hudson.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. So I'm really grateful to be here today because I'm going to share some of my work that is the most heartfelt, soulful aspect of what I do in this world. I teach Yoni yoga. I teach women how to love themselves by learning about their bodies and learning about their Yoni. So Yoni is the Sanskrit word that actually means womb or source, but it actually encompasses the vulva, the vagina, the uterus, and even the hips that protect all of those organs in that magical part of our bodies. And we are not taught as women how magnificent our Yoni is. Our Yoni is who we are. It is truly the source of our power. And we're not taught, the different aspects about it. We're taught basically that it will create life, which in itself is miraculous and remarkable. And just because of that, you would think that women would be the most respected creature on the planet. Unfortunately, it isn't that way at this time. But and a lot of that is because men aren't educated either. But our Yoni is a really mystical and magical part of who we are. And the way I teach Yoni yoga, or the way I look at the Yoni, is that it has 3 dimensions that we will really become empowered by when we connect with it. And those dimensions are our physical dimension, which is basically what we just mentioned. It's the muscles, it's the organs, it's the ability to give birth, it's the ability to bleed, it's the sexual organs that give us pleasure when we have sex. It gives our partners pleasure. And it's also the part of our bodies that, especially in our hip area, that identifies us as a woman. Our shape is feminine. The organs inside make us a feminine material woman. But the Yoni also includes an energetic aspect. It holds our 2nd chakra, which is the source of our sexual energy. And this sexual energy not only causes us to want to mate and procreate, and it helps us to feel sexy, and it helps us to feel desiring of a partner and desiring of having sexual experiences. But this is also our life force energy. And this life force energy is the actual source of the thing that keeps us alive. This is the energy that keeps all of our cells and all of the other organs in our body stimulated and filled with life. So our Yoni is the source of this energy. Every second, every day, it's like a fountain of energy. And we can actually amplify this energy so that it will keep us healthy. This life force will help us stay healthy. It will help us glow, and it will help us look sexy and beautiful and help us feel radiant and alive. And then the 3rd part of our Yoni, the 3rd dimension, is the spiritual aspect. And this is a very important part, because this is, as a divine being, as a spiritual being in a human body, this is a real, this is who you are. You're a feminine manifestation of the Almighty, of Goddess or God or the higher power. This is where your wildness exists, in your Yoni. It's where your wisdom as a woman exists, in your Yoni. And not only that, but this is where your history really starts. It really is stored. Our sexual history, especially. Our sexual history really does form who we are today. And it's really important for us to honor our sexual history, no matter what that is. And also this yoni, when we understand all of these various aspects of this miraculous part of who we are, we can step into our power. We don't have to listen to what society says and what we've been told by certain ideologies that women are the second gender. We are the powerful gender, and we can own it. And when we connect with our bodies, when we are conscious of what we own and what we have, and when we can tap into the energy, the spirit, and the power that is in our hip area, we will become more powerful, and our energy will rise within us, and it'll go out into the world. It will help to raise the collective energy of all women, and eventually it'll make its way into the masculine energy field and bring it into balance, which we really, really do need to do. So Yoni yoga is actually a practice that I developed from all the years of study that I've done with Tantra. I'm a certified Ipsalu Tantra Kriya Yoga educator. And I also studied Taoism, Taoist energy practices with Master TaShia and other teachers, and also have studied divine feminine spirituality with quite a few teachers. One of my major teachers is Laura Amazzoni, who teaches Shakta Tantra. And through all of these different studies that I have engaged in over the years, I have been able to become more powerful. I've been able to become more self-loving and more true to myself, more happy with who I am, and more confident. And so I always want to share this with other women. This is what I want women to feel. I want you to be happy. I want you to feel powerful. I want you to feel so self-loving. So one of the big parts of Yoni yoga is learning a little bit about our history, our ancient history, pre-patriarchal history. So I'm going to actually show a presentation. When you see how women, and especially the Yoni, have been revered over the ages, this will also help you to understand how powerful you are. It will help you to love yourself like you won't believe it. So I'm going to do a share screen. I'm going to dash through history because our history starts in the Paleolithic era, like 30,000 years ago, where at that time it was believed that a feminine presence created the universe. At that point in time, women were witnessing, men were witnessing women giving birth to babies. And it was like, oh my God, well, it makes sense that a feminine almighty power would birth the entire universe and create this beautiful planet. And there's lots of evidence of art of the Paleolithic era that shows a reverence for the Yoni. And you can see in this cave painting that's 35,000 years old, that you'll see a triangular shape, this pubic triangle it's called, representing the Yoni. There's also evidence in a lot of cave paintings, ochre, which represents blood. This blood may represent childbirth, the blood of birth. It could also represent the blood of death. But just know that in Paleolithic times, there were a lot of rituals that took place in caves because caves themselves were considered the womb of goddess. Here's another Paleolithic 30,000-year-old little rendering of a Yoni. This is the oldest one that has been discovered at this point in time, 37,000 years old. And we're looking lots of Paleolithic figures of the feminine body with the Yoni just easily displayed or easily seen. 22,000 years old. Many, many, many figures of the goddesses and women in Paleolithic time, and then moving into Neolithic time, starting at around 7,500 BCE. So here is a wonderful representation of a mother goddess found in Turkey. And here is a representation of goddess and women. This is a Neolithic figurine with incising. You can see the pubic triangle, but also a lot of other markings. And in some of these ancient relics, these markings were considered language of the goddess. And whoops, and there's another figure, 4500 BCE. Again, pubic triangle, very easy to see. And even this display of the Yoni, with this shape, the M shape and the V shape, those shapes are you see in all kinds of artistic representation in the Neolithic era, and many believe that it does represent the feminine. Whoops, and then moving into Greece. Cycladic art, we see all these figures of goddesses, you'll see many hundreds of these types of figures representing feminine. By the way, in all these figurines that we're discovering through the Paleolithic and Neolithic time, the vast majority are feminine. There are very few masculine that have been found. There's another Neolithic with the breasts that actually look like a vulva. We're going to move into Mesopotamia. This is the area in Syria, southeastern Turkey, and Iraq. There were many figurines devoted were devoted to the goddess found in Mesopotamia, but we're going to just focus on the goddess of Mesopotamia right now. There were many goddesses and gods who were revered during Mesopotamian time. However, the main primary deity was Inanna, the goddess of love, beauty, war, sex, justice, and political power. And she was also known as Ishtar in other parts of Mesopotamia. Again, the goddess of sensuality and beauty. Many hundreds of figurines with this representation of Inanna holding her breasts have been found. It could be representing an erotic aspect. It could also be representing the mother aspect of nurturance. Again, you can see her Yoni, the way it is illustrated. Another figurine, another example of a figurine. Now, the wonderful thing about Inanna and her culture, there was a ritual that was performed every year with the king, where the high priestess of the temple of Inanna's and there were many temples, by the way, for Inanna, and they were run by the priestesses. So the high priestess would have sacred sex, and this was called eros gamos, where the priestess represented the goddess, and the king was actually making love with the goddess to receive her blessings for an abundant and blessed life in their community. And also within the temples of Inanna, many of her priestesses, it's said, were actually sacred. We call them sacred prostitutes, which is an unfortunate term, but they actually represented the goddess, and they acted as conduits to goddess for their patrons. So men would approach them with reverence, come to the priestess and have sacred sex with this priestess so that they could actually see God, see goddess, see Inanna. We move into Greece now. Inanna actually and Ishtar, that whole goddess essence, the goddess of love and spirituality, it flourished all through Greece and all through Turkey and that whole area of South Asia and Europe. And so Aphrodite actually blossomed into a major deity in Greece around 1000 BCE. She was the goddess of love, beauty, and sexuality. Whoops. And she was considered the most beautiful of all the many goddesses that were in the Greek pantheon. And she was married to mortals, she was married to gods, she had children, but she lived her own life. She lived as she wanted to live. Women approached her because when they were looking for love or they had a troubled heart. And here's a representation of her more of a straightforward type of a figure versus an erotic figure in one of her temples in Turkey. Now, here's another example, a goddess who was majorly revered. Temples all over Greece and Turkey for Aphrodite. And it is said that in Corinth, and here is her temple ruins in Corinth, that she too had sacred prostitutes where her patrons would come to the priestesses. They would come to the temple to make love to the priestess so that they could experience goddess. And then the Romans adopted Aphrodite as Venus. So now we move into early Egypt. Again, we have this incredible goddess of love and sexuality, and she came as Kadesh in early Egypt. And then also Hathor, who arose in Egypt around 1000 BCE or more, 2000 BCE. She is the mother goddess and the cow goddess. And the goddess, she was a protector. She was the goddess of music, dance, joy, merriment, and maternal care and sexuality. And women would come to her when they needed help with love or when they needed help with birth. So here is a piece of art showing Hathor at both sides of a woman giving birth. And once again, temples, these are major deities, major goddesses that were worshipped by women and men. Here's her temple complex in Dendera, Egypt. And her priestesses during festivals during the year would go into the streets with their sistrums, these rattles that to wake up the goddess's energy. They were these wild sounds, and there were musicians, and they asked the patrons to come out of their houses and come into the streets and dance and drink libation, and let's get inebriated and enjoy goddess. Let's enjoy life, the merriment. Let's enjoy the merriment that goddess wants us to enjoy. And then they were encouraged, the patrons were encouraged to go home and make love, because sex was considered a joyful act of life. In India, India's got a very complicated, complex network of goddesses and gods. So I'm going to go very high level. But in the very beginning of the more organized spirituality and religion of India, it began with the Vedic texts. Now, of course, again, there was evidence of worship of goddess before any of these texts were written. They were written around 1500 BCE, but there have been many figurines of goddesses that were found that were much older than that. But in the Vedic texts, which were the first basically Hindu texts written with hymns and rituals and how to worship the goddesses and the gods, it does mention several goddesses, and Aditi is one of them. She was the main goddess. She was the personification of the infinite. She was the goddess of earth, sky, unconsciousness, the past, future, and fertility. And then also Saraswati was another of the main goddesses. Right now we know her as the goddess of music and art. She still continues to be worshipped today in, actually all of these goddesses do in Hindu religion. But one of the most interesting goddesses that I really love when it comes to this Hindu, when it comes to sexuality, is Rati. Now she came later. She's a later goddess. She started to emerge around 1500 AD, actually. So she's the goddess of love, carnal desire, passion, and sexual pleasure. And she is seen oftentimes with her beloved Kama. And her name, Rati, actually means sexual pleasure and sexual enjoyment. And in fact, there are such sexual positions that are called like Rati Laksha. So that just means sexual intercourse in general. Rati Bhoga, which means sexual enjoyment. But then there's one called Rashi Pasha, and it's the noose of Rati, which means, or it's probably Rati, which means it's the position in which the woman locks her legs behind her partner's back. So again, sexuality and the yoni was considered joyful. It was the yoni was considered a portal to enlightenment. In fact, the lingam and the yoni was represented in this type of stone. Those little flat stones are considered the yoni. Those tall stones inside are considered the lingam. This is the representation of the balance of masculine and feminine energy on the planet. Here we go, and again with another Shiva linga. This is a Shakti on the bottom, oftentimes also represented with the lotus flower. And here we have the yoni with a pigment. There are many rituals in which honey and milk and red pigment are poured into the yoni to receive blessings, to represent the amrita, the nurturing nectar of the goddess, to receive her blessings. And Tantra is actually an offshoot of both Hindu and Buddhism. It also recognizes goddess and gods too, but with Shakta Tantra, the main deities are feminine, and Adi Parashakti is the supreme goddess, and she has many representations. This is Shakti, another general Shakti. Parvati is one of her representations. She is the goddess of love, fertility, beauty, harmony, children, and marriage. And she is her beloved, is Shiva. Here we have Lakshmi, another representation of the great goddess. She is the goddess of wealth, fortune, love, beauty, and joy. Here she is with her beloved Vishnu. And many of the goddesses were represented with a sacred geometry. This is called a yantra. And these sacred geometries create a resonance within the body and also with the cosmic energy outside of us. So if you were to gaze into this particular yantra, it would help you to attract and activate the goddess energy around you and within you. And you can tell, of course, there is the cubic triangle inside of this yoni. Here's another example. This is the Kali yantra. In fact, a practice is to look into one of these yantras to stimulate that sexual energy or to that feminine energy inside of you. This is a Shri yantra, where the feminine and the energy, the pointing upward triangle, which represents the masculine, downward pointing triangle, representing the feminine, come together, and it creates a balance of feminine and masculine energy. So that's what we need in this planet. And then the ultimate, which is the union, the Maithuna, where the masculine actually comes to the feminine in order to be enlightened. Feminine, the goddess, the divine feminine, is actually what brings the masculine to life. And women are considered the vehicle toward bliss and enlightenment. So there are also virgin goddesses. It's not all just about sex. In history, we have some virgin goddesses, super powerful. Here's Neith. She was considered the creator of the universe. She also was the goddess of wisdom, weaving, mothers, rivers, childbirth, hunting, war, and she was a virgin. There was evidence that she said, "No man has ever lifted my skirt." So they're taking pride in their chastity. And here is Artemis, the goddess of the wilderness, wild animals, moon, and chastity. She was all on her own, no man to touch her. Athena, also a virgin goddess. By the way, I wanted to tell you that virgin doesn't necessarily mean not touched sexually or pure sexually. In ancient time and Greek and Latin, virgin actually means sovereign and independent. So a woman could actually be sexually active and still be sovereign and still considered a virgin, such as Kali. So she was yet another aspect of the divine feminine in the Hindu spirituality. Her beloved was Shiva, but she was on her own. She slayed egos. She had a lot to do. She didn't have time to just hang around with her boyfriend. And then Aphrodite, again, though she was married and had lovers, She was independent. She did her own thing. So she was considered a virgin goddess. Sacred display. Now, through history, there have been many figures that have been discovered to show how the feminine body has been represented and revered with these sacred figures. This is a figure from India, Lajagari, representing the Yoni. You'll see many of these figures through many of the temples. They're considered idols for to attract good luck and blessings. In some ritual, there will again be libation, not libation, milk and honey and things like that poured over her Yoni to represent her giving of the nectar of life and abundance of good. And here we have an image of a Tibetan yogini. In many Tibetan yogini practices, the Yoni is brought as part of the visualization to raise sexual energy in the body, to help the practitioner open up and expand to receive and unite with the goddess outside of us to actually create a divine union. And Sheela-na-gig, found throughout Ireland from 15th to the 12th century, and they still are all around Ireland. This is an interesting figure because she is not a gorgeous looking figure. She's got this hag looking face, but all these figures show her opening her vulva to expose herself. She's considered an apotropaic figure. Apotropaic means it's welcoming the good and it repels the evil. So these figures are often found over top of doorways and entryways and windows so that only the good will come in. And for luck, people will touch that Yoni. A Gorgon. She is a Greek figure exposing herself once again to repel evil. And in fact, she is found over top of architectural figures. This is an example of how large this figure is can be. And so in this temple, these ruins of a temple, you'll see the Gorgon figure at the top protecting the temple with the display of her Yoni. And then Anasmarna, which is the lifting of the skirt. Now, it was lifting of the skirt has been used and referred to as the way that evil has been warded off. And we can see that it has been represented all through history. You'll see many figurines through many eras where the goddess or the woman will have her skirt lifted to expose her Yoni or her buttocks. And here's a representation of a war that kept happening, and I can't quite remember what the war was. I believe it was a Greek war where it was just going way too long, and the women were getting tired of it. The battle was starting to come into their land, and they lifted their skirts to ward away those soldiers and make them go away, to repel them. So and then amazingly, you may have seen this in Portland, the riots that took place just last month, when there was shooting and people getting killed and rioting and crazy things happening. This very brave woman walked into the street. She displayed herself, and the people didn't know what to do. They just stopped, everything stopped. So she was able to bring some calm to this very volatile situation just by standing there and exposing herself. And we do have some videos, I'm not going to show them, but of one man standing in front of her to protect her, which that was a wonderful representation too of the masculine stepping into protection mode. And here's a wonderful photo of Anasmarna. A photographer took a group of women out, and they just lifted their skirts and they were like displaying their yoni, showing their power. Here I am the woman. Ah! And then also just know that yoni is everywhere all around you. It's not just on you, it's everywhere. If you go I went to Joshua Tree and I found many rock formations that look like a yoni. This was from Joshua Tree. And this is another representation of Joshua Tree. So just be aware. Be aware. Look around. Look at the flowers that look like a yoni. Look at an architectural rendering that might look like a yoni, or an architectural feature. Look at the grass. Notice the cracks in the sidewalk. Notice the knot in the tree. Notice the different, how the cream of your bottle comes out. You can see the yoni in everything. And just know that you are a cosmic source. You are a miracle. And your yoni is more powerful than you can ever imagine. So this is you. This is your yoni. This is you. You are infinitely beautiful and such a blessing to this planet. And please acknowledge yourself and love yourself.
I own my power and feel fully alive. I easily express myself. I know my truth and I share it.
Patriarchy is theft. I learned that from Susanna Budapest. So we are going to talk for the next few minutes about the theft of Shakti, the theft of woman's power and energy by men, by average men, not all men, but average men, and awful men. There's awful men, average men, and aware men. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the theft of energy in so many ways of patriarchy, of the dominator model, as Meloney referred to Riane Eisler, who's written some genius books. So once upon a time, long ago, in what is now called the Great Lakes area of America, there lived a tribe called the Haudenosaunee, meaning the Longhouse Builders. And the people lived for millennia, led generation after generation by councils of wise elder women and clan mothers who decided all important matters. They were egalitarian and woman honoring. The tribe was guided, not dominated. This is important. Guided, not dominated by women. The chief was usually a man, but was always chosen by the women. Children belonged to the mother, who, with the help of the aunties and the supportive men who honored and respected women, which was all of them, they taught the children the values of the tribe. So these are the Haudenosaunee, but all over the globe lived tribes very similar to them. We cannot say that everything was the same throughout history. We don't have proof of that. But here's a point I would like to make. A lot has been, a lot of woman's claims for a history of goddess has been fairly widely decried. And one of the things that we don't come back with, we kind of get caught in the trap of, well, we have to prove this scientifically. I maintain that our body remembering is just as important and just as valid as any scientific proof. So I throw that in. So all over the globe, there lived tribes similar to this tribe in the Great Lakes area. They were probably woman-centered, with women and men deciding things together in peaceful coexistence. Now, as I said, some people say there's no proof that humans ever lived this way. And one of the books on this is The Myth of Matriarchal Prehistory by Cynthia Eller. And I read that, and I disagree with it completely. Also, the great scholar Max Dashu, Suppressed Histories Archive, has a great critique of this book, and that's well worth reading. So some people say that there's no proof that humans ever worshiped goddess, that humans ever lived this way. And by the way, they say that all those goddess figurines that Meloney so graciously showed us, they say that those were children's dolls. They say that they were porn for men. Get that, porn for men. And just mere fertility cult figures. And instead of acknowledging what they clearly were, are not fertility cult figures only, although there was fertility obviously involved in the powers of woman, but they're power figures. These figures you see of these, the Neolithic figures, they're big women. They're not, most of them are not these skinny, they're fleshy, big, their breasts are large and sagging. They've already had a lot of children. These are not the nubile 20-year-olds of the tribe. They are the queens of the tribe, the mature women of the tribe, the women between 45 and 65. That's what those figures are. So some people say there's no proof that humans ever lived this way, and then they decry everything that we say. But as many of you know, this denial is refuted completely by the work of brilliant scholars like Heidi Gettner-Abendroth, who is taught at the museum, who has documented these, as she calls them, societies of peace, some of which still exist today. If the it's hard to say, Haudenosaunee exists today, if the Haudenosaunee exists today, and they do, they are not an extinct people. They are living and functioning and teaching and sharing and living their lives in the Great Lakes area. So they exist today. So if the Haudenosaunee exist today, and they do, if they remember their own history going back in time, and they do, they tell their own stories to their children. If they are woman-centered and woman-led, and they are still today, then obviously these cultures had to have existed in the past. They didn't come out of nowhere. And there's many like them all over the globe. In this book, Abendroth talks about all the different cultures that are still extant today, that are, and I myself have visited Tibet with the Mosuo people. This is a huge matriarchal matriculture, and they are amazing, and they are being assaulted. Their culture is being assaulted. They're very free sexually because in their culture, women are so honored as the clan mothers and the wise women elders that they can have sex as they choose with no ramifications, with no negative ramifications. They are free whole women, just as Meloney talked about the meaning of virgin. And but men from the so-called West, from America and from Europe, are now visiting the Mosuo in Tibet because they are free sexually, but they don't have the context of that culture. They come to the Mosuo, and the Mosuo women, having grown up in this culture where they understand that men respect them, now suddenly they're encountering these people, these men who have utterly no respect for them at all, and just think of them as free, cheap sex. And so it's causing a real issue. So this is how patriarchy is starting to affect the matriarchal cultures that we have all over the globe still living. So the point is that these cultures do exist, and those hundreds of thousands that Meloney talked about of ancient female deity figurines that have been found all over the globe, from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic, indicates truly that goddess was very likely the first deity conceived of by humans. And this is something that I treasure. This is the a Chulian goddess. And many people say she is, this is a reproduction, obviously. She is 250,000 years old, found in the Golan Heights. And she clearly is a goddess figurine. And so it doesn't go back just to the Neolithic. It goes back way, way farther than that. It goes back 250,000 years. And some people claim that statue is even older, but I'll go with the conservative estimate. 250,000 years of goddess celebration. And how many children are taught about that? So if as above, so below, which is a very common theme throughout all human culture, and if women birthed life, then it makes perfect sense, as Melanie alluded to, that the creator of all life was female in principle. And these earliest creation stories, of which we know, tell of a female creating the universe out of herself. And this is my own personal, see, get in the middle there, Willendorf. Many people call her the Venus of Willendorf because that's what 19th century male archaeologists called her. Everything was a Venus figure. Everything had to do with sex. But most of the women I know call her the Earth Mother of Willendorf. And so I keep that in my collection. So around 2000 to 3000 BCE, in the area that we now call the Middle East, the first ideas that would eventually become the Abrahamic religions started to arise, and they started to tell a new story, that there was one male God who creates all life. And according to this new idea, women are but receptacles, they are mute and passive vessels made to carry the male power of life. And this is one of the first great patriarchal reversals of truth, because that's what patriarchy is founded on, turning over the truth into the reverse of it, the lie, patriarchal reversal. But in our timeline, patriarchy does not arise everywhere at once. Goddess continues to be celebrated at the same time in many, many places. The Rig Vedas, the oldest of the sacred books of Hinduism, written around 1700 BCE in Northeast India, writes that the goddess says to us in the Rig Vedas, I am the sovereign in whom all the auspicious deities are united, shining with consciousness. I am foremost among those worthy of worship. The gods diffuse me in every direction, my presence abiding in many places and revealed in manifold ways. Sisters, she's talking about us. She's talking about you, about woman. You are the sovereign in whom all the auspicious deities are united, not only united, but birthed from. Goddess has created all gods. You are shining with consciousness. You are foremost amongst those worthy of honor. All good things diffuse your essence in every direction. Your presence can abide in many places at once and is revealed in manifold ways. And just take a moment to absorb that beauty that's about 4,000 years old of what has been thought about woman, how cultures felt about woman. But continuing with our timeline, eventually the idea of male domination spreads, and everybody always asks the question, how did patriarchy arise? The truth is, no one really knows and no one fully agrees. But somehow women's leadership and the idea of goddess begins now to fade. Some people think that climate change, with its new and harsh conditions, encourage people to turn away gradually from the previous idea of a benevolent mother. Some people think that the domestication of animals gave men the idea to do the same thing with women. Hey, it's so much easier to pen these animals up instead of chasing them down the countryside every time we want to eat one. Oh my gosh, we could do that with women too. Some people say that with the advent of agriculture and homesteading, people began settling down and being less nomadic and accumulating resources in one place, which then had to be defended from those who would come and take it. And so power slowly shifted to the physically stronger males who could defend it. I'm not sure I entirely buy any of these theories, because I know too much about the history of women and Amazon-like women who are perfectly capable of defending the tribe physically. So not sure any of these work for me. Some, like Dr. and author Leonard Shlain, think that the advent of writing changed the ways in which the human brain received information, which led to more male dominance and aggression. And Vajra reminded me that in his book, The Alphabet and the Goddess, Shlain points out that in every culture that enshrined spiritual beliefs in a sacred book, codified it in a book, that women's status began to decline dramatically. The German philosopher and historian Friedrich Engels wrote of the world historical defeat of the female sex. And he claimed that it was the development of the new idea of private property that led to woman's oppression. And Engels called, and this is so true, Engels called the working woman of his time a slave of a slave. Some think men somehow over time just became very envious and afraid of woman's tremendous power of life and death. And so they got the idea to try to control women in every way, including their sexuality and reproduction, which we see is still going on today. An ego-driven, fear-based mind says, if you cannot create life, then you must try to control life. If you cannot control life, you must destroy life. And male violence becomes more the norm. So there's no single chronology, and there are wide variations as to when patriarchy started in what parts of the world and to what degree. But, you know, whatever the case, the era of male-dominated religions now begins. Thousands of years of goddess veneration starts to slowly fade away, replaced by men's new stories of how their male god had birthed all life. And with it goes the status of women. So around 500 BCE, the book of Genesis is written by anonymous authors based on what was by now 1,000 years of male-oriented tradition from the time of the Abrahamic patriarchs. And with Genesis, another lie, the framing of Eve as the woman who ruined everything with her foolishness and her refusal to be obedient to man as she took the apple from the serpent, disobeying the new male god. There's a hidden subtext to this, and we don't have time to go into it. But if you understand that the serpent was the symbol of the priestess in pre-patriarchal times, and if you know that almost all of the art that depicted this story of Eve taking the apple from the serpent is always shown as female, always. So if the serpent is female and the serpent is the symbol of the ancient priestess before patriarchy arose, you could say that the ancient priestess is handing the apple of wisdom to Eve, even as she is being vilified and oppressed. Still, that through line is coming through. Still, that wisdom is coming through. Still, that hidden stream is happening, is still there for us. It's still there for us. So in these early stories written by men, interestingly, which, you know, patriarchy contradicts itself in so many ways. The dominator model mindset contradicts itself in so many ways. They say two things. They say women are fools, able to be taken in by evil, but also women are somehow the brilliant and cunning perpetrators of evil. And so this is the next of the great patriarchal reversals, that woman brings death and destruction. And we know the truth. The truth is that woman brings life and creativity. So all the major religions now and philosophies become more or less a tool of men to control women, full of verses telling people that men are superior. And because of woman's inferior nature, it is right and natural for men to control women. So we do not have time to go into all of the references that these old texts talk about, but you already know that this is the truth. Here in the Bible, Genesis 3:16, to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth your children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. And it goes on and on. Buddhism, which many women treasure, actually has a lot of misogynist aspects to it. Buddhism says if a man leads an evil life, his punishment will be reincarnation as a woman. The other well-known religions all speak of the oppression of woman as right and natural. My friend Vajra can tell you a lot about the mother of the Buddha. Where do you think he learned his wisdom? So we have to take all of that into account. By 400 BCE, Greek men were telling each other the new story of their god Zeus, birthing his daughter Athena from his forehead, perpetuating the lie that the male is the primary creator of life. So, sisters, woman hating and the still respected men who have promoted it, it still forms the foundation to what is called Western culture. And on a globe, what's West and what's East? What is East? You know, West and East only can exist on a globe. And that's why I don't prefer that term. If you make Europe the center of the world, which of course it is not, that's very Eurocentric. So I don't like those terms, East and West. The ancient philosophers of Greece are still revered today as the greatest thinkers of all time. And this is what they had to say about woman. Plato, who is known as the founder of Western spirituality and philosophy, says, the true punishment of men is to endure women. And his famous student Aristotle, who is called the father of the Western world, declared that women are natural slaves, and the female is, as it were, a deformed male. He said it, deformed male. There are so many more misogynist references from the ancient philosophers that time prevents us from sharing here. Please just trust me. I've studied this a lot. It's an unbelievable, ugly ocean of what these supposedly great men have had to say. And what they have taught their students, their male students, about women. And this is not just in Europe and the Mediterranean. By this time, Chinese Confucianism also declared, because patriarchy was spreading, the idea was spreading, that women are to be obedient to their father before her marriage, obedient to her husband after her marriage, and obedient to her first son if she's widowed. So her whole life, she never gets to be free. She always has some male telling her what to do. It's very important for us to remember that these ideas of men form the basis of our entire current culture and the underpinning of why women are treated the way we are. The harm that this prevailing paradigm of male superiority has on our self-esteem, our belief in ourselves as women, is immense. I believe that women must see that we are facing woman hating as foundational to our current world, not just a few bad men disrespecting women. These ideas of men are not just various opinions that we as women can wave away. I believe that these ideas live in our bodies, in our DNA. The oppression is physical and internalized, but it can be washed away. And the work of the beautiful women on this Sacred Body Summit today, they're doing that work that is so needed for us women to bring to the fore this hidden oppression so that we can wash it away. This is exactly the work that is needed for women to heal and strengthen and return to their full wisdom and power. So I thank you, sisters, on this conference who are leading the way, and also for the many women like Vajra Ma and Ruth Barrett who are doing this work also. So let's carry on with our patriarchal timeline. We're now at the 1200s to the 1700s, and the Catholic Church, which has the most misogynist church ever, you might say, is now completely in power all across Europe. And they torture and burn alive at the stake anywhere from 50,000, depending upon your sources, 50,000 to hundreds of thousands of women. A lot of people still claim the number 9 million, but I think most scholars do not agree with that. So we'll just say hundreds of thousands of women. And these women were not witches. We do not validate that term. They were housewives, they were herbalists, they were midwives, they were women who had the unbelievable bad luck to have their husbands die and leave them to live alone, unprotected. These women were accused of witchcraft, and these are the burning times that you all know about, by the male-run Catholic Church. And my friend Vajra, as we were talking yesterday, had a really great point to make. She said, this was not a witch hunt. It was a woman hunt. And it wasn't just about religion. Many of the women the Catholic Church went after had property. And so declaring them witches and imprisoning them and killing them was the way to acquire that property, because their property would go to the church after they were murdered. So you might ask yourself, how did the Catholic Church get to be so rich? It is built on the murder of women. The supposedly greatest philosophers of the last few hundred years were also likewise infected with woman hating, and their ideas still are taught in university philosophy classes today. And here's what some of the so-called great philosophers had to say about women. Spinoza: women are apt to seduce men into making irrational political decisions. Hegel: women regulate their actions not by the demands of universality, but by arbitrary inclinations and opinions. Nietzsche: when a woman turns to scholarship, I love this, there is usually something wrong with her sexual apparatus. Schopenhauer: men are by nature merely indifferent to one another, but women are by nature enemies to one another. So, sisters, the despising of woman and the dominator model of patriarchy both lie fundamentally at the heart of our so-called Western culture. And both of them must be brought to light and seen for what they are: completely life-denying. And they are also harmful to little boys and the men they grow up to be, who are our children, let's remember. How can men be truly happy in a world where their mates and their mothers and their sisters and their neighbors and their daughters are considered inferior beings? We have to face these realities clearly, without shame, without any blame. Both women and men must face this together before we can together transcend them as two sexes creating civilization. So now on our timeline, we're at the mid 19th century, and we come full circle back to our original tribe, the Haudenosaunee. In 1869, Matilda Jocelyn Gage is co-leading the National Women's Suffrage Association, along with Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Now, Gloria Steinem would later say of Gage that she was the woman who was ahead of the women who were ahead of their time. So in Gage's time, just 150 years ago, let's remember, British law decreed that woman had no legal existence once she was married. When she was married, everything she owned became her husband's property. If she worked, she had to turn over 100% of her wages to her husband. If she inherited property, it became 100% his. Her husband had the legal right to rape and beat her. Her children belonged to the father who, get this, upon dying could, if he wanted to, will away his unborn child who is in the womb of his wife, will away that unborn child to somebody else to be taken away and raised by somebody else. That was his legal right. Of course, no woman could ever write a will, and certainly not vote. In these terribly oppressive conditions for women, Gage was so inspired by the lives of respect and honor that the Haudenosaunee women lived. She wrote about them. Never was justice more perfect, never was civilization higher. She was amazed to discover that woman oppression was not indeed universal, which she had assumed. You can understand based on the way she had been raised in that culture. She was amazed to find out that different peoples live differently and better. So it inspired her to keep working for justice for women. So now we come to 1920, just 100 years ago. And after 100 years of struggle and fighting by brave, intelligent, determined women, women are finally successful in forcing men to acknowledge women's right to vote, to being considered a full human being. And you always hear this phrase, that's when women were given the right to vote. No, we were given nothing. We struggled mightily to get men to see that we were human beings and had rights. Average men have never given us anything. My theory is that there are awful men, there are average men, and there are aware men. 10% of men are so awful that all we can do is separate them from society to protect us all. Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin, Idi Amin, you can add your own favorites. I won't get political here. 10% of men are aware men. These are men like the men of the Haudenosaunee tribe, woman respecting, fair, compassionate, just, having reverence for life and she who brings life, knowing that all is sacred. But 80%, sisters, are average. Average men, that is the group running the world today. The world as we see it today is created by average men, and it is a very much mixed bag. Some good stuff, yes, but definitely leaning towards violence, war, rape, cruelty, and selfishness. Now, you might be surprised to note that I believe that these average men are not to blame. This is a co-created society. There's no point in blaming men. We don't get anywhere by blaming men. they are our children. And perhaps we can consider that we have not put proper boundaries on them, as is necessary for children to be raised with wisdom. I'm not about shaming and blaming. I'm about figuring out what will fix the problem. So back to our timeline. It's 1925, and still woman hating remains rampant throughout society. Sigmund Freud, the father of modern psychology, writes, this is what Sigmund Freud wrote about women: women oppose change, receive passively, and add nothing of their own. What a patriarchal reversal. For one thing, we birth every single baby that comes to the planet. We add nothing of our own. So here we are, here and now, in modern times. Of course, we must say thank you to the feminists of my youth, the 70s, whose amazing work enlightened me and all of us, Steinem and Dworkin and Friedan and so many others. But even after all their work, today women make up half of the world population, but still work nearly 2/3 of all hours worked, still receive 1/10 of worldwide income, 1/10, and still own less than 1/100th of worldwide property. And now, in 2020, women's hard-won rights are under serious assault. Our government just signed an anti-abortion agreement with 30 other countries. That just happened this week.
Wow.
And I ask you, sisters, what is a person called when their body is controlled by another? You know, a slave. Vladimir Putin in Russia just reduced punishment of men for beating up their wives. Reduced. Me Too is still a thing. Gangs of terrorist men are building their ideologies of control and subjugation, starting with the most vulnerable of their population, women and girls. Forced marriages by little girls of 10 and 12 to men in their 60s and older is still very common in parts of the world. And these little girls are also slaves, slaves of men, labor slaves, sex slaves. In Afghanistan, men continue to stone women to death as a punishment for perceived crimes. Typically, as they throw the heavy rocks and bricks at a woman buried in a hole with only her head sticking up, these men, and if you have seen videos of this, which they are available, I don't advise watching them, but they are available. The men they accuse us of being illogical and emotional. These men are enraged and hysterical, and they are screaming hysterically, Allahu Akbar, God is great. They are trying so hard to convince themselves that there is no goddess. They're going to kill this woman who represents goddess, and their God, their male God, is great. And so-called honor killings of women by male family members is still, of course, common. In Malawi this past October, a woman was stoned to death for witchcraft. So are the burning times back? We may well ask. Sex trafficking of women and girls is up dramatically. No one even knows the real numbers. And much of this, there's a lot in feminism now that says, porn is okay, we're all progressive. Much of this is driven by the phenomenal increase of men watching internet porn. And this is not your grandfather's Playboy. This is real life abuse of women, increasingly focused on humiliating women psychologically and hurting them physically. And the age at which boys see their first porn, which if you don't know what gonzo porn is, get a clue. Get a clue. Women are being gagged and choked with multiple penises jammed into multiple female orifices. The average age boys see this is now 11. 11. A Pornhub survey of users say that 75 million men daily watch porn on just their site. And there are thousands of sites that are additional. The push to erase woman as life giver is officially on. Scientists are at work right now developing artificial wombs so that they can now make real, in our time, the Zeus myth. Males can now create and gestate life. In 2017, fetal researchers at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia grew lambs in artificial wombs. In other words, a group of men who have great technological intelligence, but not a shred of wisdom, decided to grow lambs in plastic bags because they could. And they claim, and they are probably right, that they will be growing humans in 10 years in plastic bags. What kind of creature do we imagine will come from a plastic bag in a lab, never knowing the mother's psychic presence, her heartbeat, her hormones?
Thank you,
her love?
Ava. I hate to interrupt. What a presentation. I just want to make sure that we have some time for questions. So if
Absolutely.
maybe to close with something
Certainly.
positive, if there is.
No, there is a great positive ending. So this is the Zeus male myth of male creation in its latest form. And it's sort of like men in some ways, average men are saying, Mother Nature, she's not the boss of us. So if we women and the good men who support us allow civilization to continue down this path, women may soon no longer be needed. If you don't know anything about sex robots, wow, okay, that's a whole thing happening. And that is a very terrifying thing. These are the things that average men are doing. Men are not the enemy. Ignorance is. The woman is the mother and the teacher to her children. And just as the mother gives her children boundaries, so they can grow up with wisdom, I believe that women need to give men boundaries. These men are our fathers, our sons, our brothers, our children, and we must provide them with the boundaries. Do we imagine that the coming age of artificial intelligence is going to better the world for women? Abendroth says that we are now in a time of super patriarchy. And for the good of all civilization, I say that women have to reclaim their natural spiritual authority. And I believe they can. So Matilda Gage was made an honorary tribe member and given the clan name, She Who Holds the Sky. And I think it's time now for women to remember that these ancient women are still speaking to us. Our ancestresses are still whispering to us through our bodies. It's time now for women to reclaim their queen archetype, the values of the leader, and to lead men to goodness. We need to create our moon lodges once again together. It's time for us to hold boundaries. It's time for us to wash away the ugliness and replace it with women as leaders, leading in beauty. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We do teach the queen archetype, which is the leader of humanity. And we talk about the queen archetype as being both an age of woman, but also an archetype that lives within her no matter her age. So the age of the queen is 45 to 65. Many of us grew up being trained that it's just maiden, mother, crone. And I find that to be a terrible erasure of this period. You know, that might have made sense in a time when women died at 50. You know, you had to go be crone right away, you know. But now many women live well into their late 80s and 90s. And so if we leave motherhood at 45 or 50, then we're suddenly a crone? No, we have 20 years to be queen, to lead our tribe, to lead our family with goodness. And many people have this misinformation about the queen. She's the diva, she's the bitch, she's the queen bee. It's none of those things. She's the good leader who leads without any ego. And she leads for the good of all in these ancient matriculture forms. And so we teach that.
I am guided by my deepest purpose. I value and respect my truth. I value and respect the truth of others.
chakras have become very popular, but in case you're not familiar with them, they are energy centers in our body. There are energy centers in our energy body. We have an energy anatomy, just like we have a physical anatomy. And energy anatomy systems have existed in cultures all around the world. Chakra is an ancient Sanskrit word, but energy center mappings have existed in cultures all around the world. And what's really amazing is how similar they are, how different cultures in different parts of the world discovered these similar anatomies. So what I want to do, because it's right before lunch and we've already had 2 hours of really stimulating, heady stuff, I want to kind of pick up the thread of the Yoni yoga and work with our second chakra in our pelvis. And if that's new to you, we'll talk more about it in a minute. But I want to really get us into the energy, because how do things really shift? They do shift in our mind. But part of energy teachings is that there is this matrix beneath us, right? There's a matrix beneath our physical body, emotions, and thoughts, or actually it interweaves between those. And that's what it means to work at the energy body level. It's truly holistic, because through your energy body, you can access both physical body, spirit, and psyche. And then at that energy level, we're all connected in this energy matrix. So the beliefs of patriarchy that Ava so eloquently spoke to, those are embedded in this matrix, and they're actually embedded then in our own energy body, right? So part of energy work is trying to release those, bring forth the Yoni energy, right, that Meloney was speaking to, and rewrite, reprogram yourself, and then that emanates out. It contributes then through your actions that are now coming from this new place, this new mindset, to reprogramming the world. That's what we're really trying to do here today, right? So let's first just settle into our sacral chakra and bring up this energy as powerfully as we can. So if you want to stand for this, I invite you to do that. I'm not going to, so I don't mess up my lighting and my microphone here. You can stand and move around. And what I'm going to invite you to do is just put your hands on your lower belly between your hip bones. And if it's comfortable for you, just begin to sway back and forth a little bit. Get some movement in there, because the feminine energy, the feminine chakras, and I'll talk about what that means in a little bit, is linked to flow. It's linked to receptivity. It's linked to flow. So let's get some swaying going, some flow going. You can close your eyes or leave them open. But what I want to invite you to do is visualize beneath your hands, inside your pelvis, a beautiful lotus flower made of light. So a lotus flower is like a water lily. It's quite horizontal. It's a fairly flat flower. So this lotus is open in your pelvis. It's made of light, whatever color light you see today. The petals are stretching from hip bone to hip bone, and from your spine to the front of your body. It is anchored underneath by a stem going through the base of your body into the earth, just like a water lily is anchored into the bottom of the pond. So the swaying is fluid, but not unanchored. And imagine from the center of this lotus, there are beautiful swirling rays of light that are extending up through your body, up through your belly, your solar plexus, your heart center, your upper chest and your arms. And if you would prefer now to swing your arms around, you can, rather than holding your pelvis, whatever feels good to you. This sacral lotus is emanating energy up through your neck, out your mouth. If you want to open your mouth and sing or speak or say a sacred sound of some type or just yell, you can do that if you're on mute. This energy is flowing up to your third eye, in your forehead, and up out the crown of your head. It's creating just a rainbow of light that then emanates out, fills the room, fills your home. It's all sourced from this infinite light coming through this sacral lotus in your pelvis, an infinite supply flowing up and out, flowing out into your community, the whole world, emanating out. And as it reaches people, they just soften, they relax, they soften. And that creates space for change. So I'll just be quiet for another 30 seconds and let you feel that and imagine that. Now begin to bring your hands back to your pelvis, drawing inward a little bit more. Settle your swaying a little bit and your seat. You can take your seat again if you like, although I certainly don't mind if you listen to this sitting up or standing or lying down, whatever is comfortable for you. Good. So that was our second chakra in the system that I work with. There are many chakra mappings. And in fact, I work with multiple chakra mappings in my own healing work. But in my book and in most of my public work, I stick with the 7 chakra model that you will see on most yoga walls these days. It's in fact only one model, so it is important to know that. But that in that model, in general, the second chakra is in the pelvis. That visual that I just gave you of this lotus in the second chakra, anchored through the root chakra and then light swirling up through the rest of the body. I really offer that as an alternative to the patriarchal Kundalini model, which you may have heard of, which is a cobra coiled at the root chakra. And as we meditate, it's said, or as we evolve spiritually, as we grow, the Kundalini rises up to the crown, and it's sometimes visualized like a cobra coming up to the crown. Really, sometimes it's described as Shakti coming up to meet Shiva, Shakti being the feminine energy coming up to meet Shiva. But it's all based on the idea that the energy body and the Kundalini or spiritual growth energy is pooled at the root chakra. And that's a lot of traditional teachings. But in fact, if you go back and you can sort of trace through some of what Meloney wrote, a lot of the original teachings around the chakras and energy teachings clearly distinguished that women's energy is pulled in the sacral and that the Kundalini is actually pulled at the sacral, not the root. So there actually always was this distinction that there's a masculine and feminine energy body. And just like there are differences at the physical level, there's differences at the energy body level, depending on the layer, what layer of the chakra you're on, right? So there's different models of the layers of the chakras or energy centers, but the very inner is pure light, and that is ungendered, right? The next layer is this level of psychological conditioning and karma across past lives. If you believe that, ancestral, there's actually several layers in there. That shapes how we see and experience the world. That level, because we're in different physical bodies, is often gendered, right? And then we have our physical body and the energy, the chakra linked to the energy body. So depending on what level of the energy body you're dealing with, it's gendered or non-gendered. Now, it's difficult right now. I don't like to say women's and men's energy bodies. I prefer to say feminine and masculine energy bodies, because as we are exploring now as a society, we are realizing that gender is a social construct, right? And part of what we are opening up is this separation of energies, feminine and masculine. And it's so interesting in Tantra, there are also internal tantric practices, in addition to the sexual external tantric practices that Meloney was speaking about. And I'm sure she probably also talks about the internal ones too, where you are owning the feminine and masculine in yourself without a partner, right? And this is actually in the spiritual traditions, the path to enlightenment is owning the masculine and feminine entirely within you. So really what we're trying to do is have all men and women own all the things that are feminine and masculine. But what happened historically is we divided up feminine traits, masculine traits, and then through the evolution of patriarchy that Ava took us through, right? Gradually, the masculine traits were considered superior to the feminine traits. Well, within our energy structure, the chakras represent different traits, and the chakras associated with the feminine traits then are greatly unbalanced and damaged, right? And part of healing then on an individual level is to heal those feminine chakras and empower the masculine chakras. As feminism has evolved, we primarily focused on granting women access to masculine power structures. And that also happened at the energetic level. There was a lot more focus on women developing traits that had previously been considered to be masculine, right? Assertiveness, power in the world, external power, voice, all of these things, right? The things that were associated with the feminine, nurturing and caretaking, receptivity, etc., were devalued. Creativity, inspiration, they never rose up in the, that's what really has to happen, right? It's the raising up of that sense of value, right? So I have 14-year-old boy-girl twins, and I'm still, in addition to a 16-year-old, I'm still shocked, right, at the conditioning that occurs around, for boys, around the repression of emotion, and for girls around people pleasing, right? And this, all of these kinds of things, taking on of others' emotions is essentially what people pleasing is, right? Present yourself in a way that will make other people happy. So it's all very interesting how it plays out. So what we're really trying to do is not so much, it's not simply about bringing the feminine forward within ourselves. It's actually about balancing both within all of us and creating space in society for all of us to express all of them. Part of what sexual trauma does of any type, sexual abuse, assault, 80% or more of which is male on female. That's not all, but the vast majority of it is that it is a denigration in a very painful, violent way of that feminine body and of that feminine energy. And because women are rooted in the second chakra, it's the seat of the Kundalini, it actually often blocks our actual access to our power, in addition to the other wounds it creates, right? Trauma patterns, feelings of unworthiness, feelings of shame. Okay, so that's all the intro. I want to talk now about the actual chakra structure and feminine and masculine traits. So the way that I work with it is that the root chakra at the tailbone, the navel or solar plexus chakra, which is third, the throat chakra, which is fifth, and the crown chakra, which is the seventh, are part of the masculine pathway of energy. The sacral chakra in our pelvis that we just worked with is the seat of the feminine energy body, and the heart, and the third eye. We all have all chakras. They all have yin and yang expressions. But by default, by virtue of the fact that women are anchored in the second chakra, and again, I should say the feminine energy body, because you could be in a female biological body and relate more to the masculine energy body, or vice versa, or you may feel within that spectrum that you truly are somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to define it in terms of the feminine energy body and the masculine. The feminine energy body anchored in the second chakra, because it is a receptive in chakra, tends to be more emotionally fluid and more absorbent, right? The male energy body, the masculine energy body, because it's anchored in the root, tends to be more solid and by default more rigid, right? So what this means in general is that energetically, this is very high level, men often need to focus more on fluidity. Women often need to focus more on boundaries, right? By default, we are more empathic than men. There's plenty of empathic men out there, right? But by default, technically, our energy body actually pulls in, right? The second chakra is actually an energy center that pulls energy in. So as we're experiencing our environment, the emotions of people around us, we have a tendency to pull them in. Then a lot of female conditioning supports that in terms of people pleasing. If you experienced abuse as a child, you may have picked up the patterning around, I don't have a right to boundaries. That's part of patriarchal conditioning as well. I don't have a right to boundaries. So there's a technical piece to this taking on of others' energies, and there is a conditioning piece, right? And part of working with your chakra body is learning how to boundary that second chakra, how to shut off that inward pulling energy when you don't want it activated as you're out in the world, right? So that is one of the first aspects. There's 3 aspects of the feminine energy body. The first is that we're inward pulling by virtue of being anchored in this second chakra, and it's helpful to learn how to deal with that. The second is that because we're linked to our energy, the second chakra is linked to our reproductive system. Our energy waxes and wanes. We have life cycles and phases just like our physical body does. So during menstruation, for example, our second chakra, as we're coming to ovulation, becomes much more emanating, actually more solid. So actually at the peak of ovulation, we have better energetic boundaries. We're less empathic in terms of picking up others' energies. We're very emanating, right? And they've tracked this in terms of hormonally, the pheromones that we're putting out at that time, et cetera. Our body has a biological process that it's trying to do, right? It's trying to procreate at that time. Energetically, it's mirrored by this outward energy. And then as we move into menstruation, it starts to pull more inward, right? So we have this waxing and waning that's occurring. A lot of people a lot of goddess cultures work with the moon. Your cycle may correspond to the moon or it may not. There's all these different ways that it can or may not. So you can be working with overlapping structures in terms of this. If you're really connected to the moon, you might be working with overlapping structures of your own cycle and of the moon waxing and waning. But being aware of this cycle can be really helpful, because at that peak of ovulation, when the second chakra is really open, all those aspects of the second chakra, which are all those Yoni features that Meloney spoke of, creativity, inspiration, sensuality, sexuality, receptivity, all of that is magnified in an outward way at the peak. So something like this, like doing public speaking, right? Or a presentation or a huge creative outlet isn't really empowered at that time. Meanwhile, during the days leading up to menstruation and during menstruation, our ability to problem solve on a shadow level, our ability to see into ourselves, our ability to see beneath the surface of things is greatly empowered if we can create the space for that, because that is the inward aspect of the second chakra. As we move into pregnancy, essentially what's happening is that our second chakra is open all the time because we don't have this cycle, right? We talk about in an ideal pregnancy, which far too women have, unfortunately, for a lot of social and physical reasons in our society in terms of how we treat pregnancy. Your second chakra is opening, and in that final phase, it is like the worlds are open. The doors between the worlds are open, right? Because just as our physical body is the doorway for physical birth, that second chakra is the spiritual doorway, right? And it becomes open. And in the tantric teachings related to the second chakra is another doorway into enlightenment. It's the doorway of primordial creation, right? Meloney showed us that cosmos picture, right? So in those final stages of pregnancy, that doorway is all the way open, and it stays open through birth and a little bit post-birth. And there's this huge influx. Now, most of us, then you have a baby, you don't have a lot of time to integrate that feeling, right? That opening that has occurred. But that's part of what can happen at that time. And it doesn't, obviously, you don't need to experience pregnancy for it to open it. This is part of what chakra work is that you can access this doorway without sex, without pregnancy. Those are just 2 doorways for doing it. What happens postpartum then is we now have an energy line to another human being, right? This mother-child energy line. And this doorway starts to crash. And we also have this hormonal adjustment, and it can be this real sense of the energy really collapsing. And part of the work that needs to occur is bringing the energy back up into the upper chakras, right? So then during perimenopause, this is, again, the second chakra is the seat of the Kundalini. Perimenopause is this phase leading up to menopause that we now know really physically, it's when our hormones are beginning to become less regular. Our cycles are beginning to become less regular. We're starting to shift. It can be up to 10 years. And in Kundalini teachings, it's an exceptionally powerful time. So the average age of menopause is 52. So we're saying 42 to 52, which incidentally corresponds to a big year. For those of you who follow astrology, there's something called a Uranus opposition right around that time, around 41, 42. It's also a huge transit, right? And guess what Uranus is considered to be? The planet of Kundalini. It's linked to Kundalini, right? So what happens in those 10 years is bursts of Kundalini, right? We no longer have this regulation, but because of that, there's actually larger bursts of Kundalini occurring. And essentially what it is for a woman who is working in a conscious way, it's a time in which anything limiting her power will be brought to her attention. And you're going to be forced to face it, right? So this can be past trauma. It can be unhealthy relationships. It can be a lot of different things. Work, it can be social factors in the world. So that is the challenge of this time, is how do you grow into your power? Because then what menopause is it's the opportunity to have that second chakra open at all times or at will, right? As opposed to it being on this cycle, right? That's the opportunity of that time. And then it corresponds to the immersion of not only feminine wisdom, but spiritual gifts, energetic gifts, literally sorcery, whatever you want to call it. The ability to do things with energy is really very literally what it's linked to in the teachings that teach Kundalini, right? On another level, it could be putting together something like this and feeling that energetic transmission. It could be holding a group together and being able to do that. It could be working in whatever field, transmitting something into a book or a poem or an art piece or your work, whatever it is that you do. It's coming into your power in a whole new level that is really linked to creativity. And that is what that perimenopausal transit, this is really meant to be our most powerful phase, is that whole phase of life, this whole menopausal phase of life, especially now that we're living longer. And that phase can be 40, 50 years potentially, right? Okay, so that's really the women's energetics and ways how our energy shifts over our lifetime, the difference between the root chakra versus energy sacral chakra rooting. But I want to get into I can't do too much on that. I'm going to run out of time on the sexual trauma. So now you can see this sacral chakra. This is the heart of our energy body. Our energy body links into both our physical body and our psyche and spirit. It holds all of these different imprints of things that have happened to us and our conditioning. You can imagine how sexual trauma, abuse, assault, harassment, and in fact, I would say just living in this world sometimes is sexual trauma. So that's just the reality of it. So I feel like everyone should do this work. I hate to even use that term because it limits. Women are then going, have I experienced that or not? To some extent, everyone experiences it. It's actually the denigration of our power base, right? It's actually cultural blocks, and then if you've experienced sexual trauma, personal blocks to your actual power base. It's not only in the second chakra, though. It reverberates through our entire energy body, but healing it usually involves going very deeply into the themes of the second chakra. And if you're working energetically, there's a lot of different modalities, and I believe every sexual trauma survivor really needs to find the right mix of modalities that work for them. But if you're working energetically, it's almost always going to involve some really deep work on the root and the sacral, and especially the sacral, and that then reverberates throughout the whole energy body. But I'm going to walk through each chakra just as a model for how you might work with the chakras from a sexual trauma perspective. At the root chakra level, the main issue is often the tendency to disassociate from our body, right? The way that we handle trauma especially repeated abusive episodes, is often to create ways to leave our body so we can survive the abuse, right? But then that can create patterns of leaving our body whenever we feel anxiety or discomfort, etc. I feel a lot of women are actually conditioned around leaving their body to some extent when they feel anxious, because our very relationship to our body as we grow up is not supported, right? It's all about image. It's all about what it looks like. It's not about what it feels like, what it means to experience pleasure in our body, all of those things. So we're already somewhat disassociated from our body through cultural conditioning. And then if you experience sexual abuse or assault, there may be even more of that, right? So part of the work is learning how to anchor into that root chakra, which represents the physical body. Then in the second chakra, it's everything that we've been talking about. Opening up to your cycles and phases of your life as a positive expression of your energy body, and connecting to the themes of the second chakra: sensuality, sexuality, creativity, inspiration, feminine power in general, undoing the negative conditioning around all of that, and really bringing that forth within yourself and connecting literally to this part of your body sometimes. Often what is the biggest emotional block held, you could say, in the second chakra is shame, right? Shame about our body in some way, shame that it was the site of the abuse or assault, shame, or if shame about our appearance, shame about female sexuality, which, as Ava pointed out, is embedded in every spiritual tradition to some extent. And psychology, Freudian psychology. So there's imprints of shame that occur from our experiences, and releasing that shame from your body and your second chakra then releases a huge amount of energy through your whole chakra system, because that second chakra is the seat of the Kundalini, right? The navel chakra, or solar plexus, depending on what focal point you use for the third chakra, is about power, and it's largely about boundaries for women. That's often the first place that I find for sexual abuse and assault survivors in particular is important to work. There is a messaging around your body's not your own. You don't get to make decisions about how your body is used, right? And that's the most fundamental boundary. So reclaiming that is navel chakra work, reclaiming that right to boundaries, and literally technically learning how to activate that energy center to push out other people's energies. And it creates a whole new default, because a lot of women are walking around with a default of empathic absorption, right? Which we talked about earlier. So it's about it takes a little bit of work at first to consciously kind of recreate. And this does not mean closing your heart. It only means blocking out, taking energies into your body in the sense of feeling responsible for managing the emotions of everyone around you, right? Has nothing to do with blocking meeting the world with an open heart. Right? Having healthy boundaries and meeting the world with an open heart go together. So then, in fact, when we don't have healthy boundaries, we often have to create artificial guards to our heart, right? The heart chakra then is about worthiness, right? Our sense of worth, and how that's reflected in our ideas about love and what we expect to get, especially from romantic relationships, but also feminine relationships. And part of patriarchal conditioning is instigating jealousy between women, right? And that we're in competition. We're in competition for the male gaze. And then as feminine progressed within, say, the corporate and government world, right? We're in competition for those few top jobs that women are going to be allowed to have, right? So that everyone can say, oh, we now have 2 women on our 20-person executive board, right? Oh, we now have 2 women on our 20-person C-level executive suite, right? But everyone knows, oh, there's only 2. But at the entrance level, there's 50-50, right? So we have a lot of social cultural barriers that are occurring to that, the whole mommy tax, all that business as well in the outer world. But a piece of it is also, it's instigating this jealousy, right? It's feeding this patriarchal conditioning of women competing with each other. All of that is often lodged in the heart. Letting go and releasing that is heart chakra work. Throat chakra is our right to speak and speak our truth, as opposed to speaking from people pleasing, right? And if you've experienced sexual trauma or assault, there was almost always some secrecy around it, right? Either you never told anyone, Perhaps your abuser told you not to tell anyone or something would happen, right? Threats. Or you told someone and they didn't believe you. Or you told someone or reported it and you were shamed for it. Or you told someone and they said, okay, I believe you, but let's not tell anyone else because we still have to invite Uncle Harry to Christmas. So you just stay in the other room, right? I believe you and we'll get you therapy, but don't tell anyone else. We're not going to tell the rest of the family, right? So it's just all about these patterns of secrecy, right? Which just feeds the pattern of shame. You're saying to me, I believe you, it's okay, let's get treatment, but you're telling me, let's not tell anyone else, meaning it's on me, right? I have to hold it. And that is really a lot of throat chakra work when you're using chakras in terms of sexual trauma healing. And finally, the third eye is intuition and our right to see and our right to another level of knowing besides this patriarchal model that's been handed down, which is totally based on a very top-down rational form of thought as the only form of knowing, right? And claiming that right. When we talk about the burning years, all of the healers and midwives and seers that were killed, and it didn't just happen in Christianity. That's what's really amazing. I can't go into all that right now, but this real fear of feminine intuitive power and astrologers, all of these different forms of knowing denigrated, and that is all third eye. And then the crown is our right to direct spiritual connection, right? Which also gets blocked through the perpetuation that these patriarchal, hierarchical religious structures are the only way that you are allowed to connect to spirit, as opposed to a direct connection, right? So we see patriarchal and we see sexual trauma as representative of patriarchy, blocking or wounding throughout our energy body system. And it then reflects on all these other levels. So that's really what we're working to heal, is this full body owning of our right to all of these things. And then this balancing of feminine and masculine energy, and that the sacral chakra energies of both men and women are valued, that our little boys are valued for being nurturing and sensitive and caring, just as we now value our little girls for being phenomenal soccer players and powerhouses, right? It's much more acceptable right now for girls to be out there in sports than it is for a boy to play with dolls. There has not been, and really all that does is reflect that we still denigrate, right, the feminine energies as opposed to bringing them up. So on an energetic level, this is about shifting that whole balance and healing all of that. You know, this model of the Kundalini sort of took hold in the West, and it was just a product of that the teachers that came over were male yogis, right? And this is how, and I take Ava's point about East and West, so I don't really like that phrase either, but that is how a lot of these teachings migrated, right? Initially. Now we understand that there are chakra and energy center teachings from all over the world, and there's some amazing resources on that from one of my main mentors, Cindy Dale, who's really mapped energy center mappings from all over the world, from every continent, and it's really interesting stuff. This model that the Kundalini flows up from the root and awakening is through the crown only, right? We lost that. In fact, there was a lot of other pathways that are taught even in chakra-based traditions. The path of the heart, right? Which is through love to unconditional love, right? And then the path of the sacral, which is the path of primordial creation. And a lot of tantric teachings, it's very interesting. They talk about the woman's sacral chakra being the center of this mandala, and that as two individuals are having sex, there is this, this opening that can occur between the mandala. And there are tantric teachings that were also women together, and the magnification of that mandala power coming out from the center of the mandala out. But for men, it was really taught the value for them was being able to access this energy that was harder for them to access on their own, right? So our body was considered this sacred mandala to access through. So a lot of the meditation teachings in Tantra, there are meditations where instead of focusing on the crown, You focus on going through the second chakra into primordial creation, or you focus on going through the heart into unconditional love. So there's a lot of spiritual models out there within the yoga chakra traditions, besides the bring the energy up to the crown model. In my book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, what I was trying to do was create 12 very accessible activations. And I also put the recordings on my website that anyone could utilize, that you didn't have to be someone who already knew Kundalini yoga or how to work with the chakras. So they're visual, they use affirmations. And if it resonates for you, it's a powerful way. You just, by working with them, it essentially, as you activate a chakra and build up its power, the things blocking its power just start to release. Sometimes then that triggers emotions or things in your life that you have to deal with in some way. That's how the process works, inner and outer, to sort of really claim the power of that aspect of your life. And sometimes things just go away. I also want to put a shout out to the Breathe Network, the breathenet.org, which is a nonprofit that specifically focuses on sexual trauma healing. And they provide training on trauma sensitivity for other kinds of healers, everyone from meditation, all energy healers, EMDR, how to work in a trauma sensitive way, because we now know a lot more about how trauma impacts the nervous system. And it's very important to understand how to work with someone in a way that doesn't re-trigger, isn't re-traumatizing. And I work with a lot of people that have been, re-traumatized by going to a very well-meaning masseuse or Reiki healer who touch them without their permission, or turn the lights down really low, or things like that. And being trauma informed and trauma sensitive is all about creating choice and a sense of collaboration, that there's always discussion about how you're working, which is a very feminine way, right?
I highly recommend subscribing to your mailing list, because you really don't email too often, but it's always important stuff, just keeping us posted. So highly recommend signing up to your mailing list.
Thank you. Yes. And you can join that at chakraempowermentforwomen.com, or my client site is enlightenedenergetics.com, and my blog is mommymystic.com. And they're all linked to each other. Thank you, Ava. Yours too. They're all linked to each other, so you'll find them through each other. And I have a lot of free meditations. I do have a free ebook on sexual trauma healing through the chakras. It's over 10 years old now. I've been debating whether or not to take it down. I don't, because so many people say don't, but it's really a precursor to Chakra Empowerment for Women. So I consider the Chakra Empowerment for Women more complete, but many women still find that free book helpful. So it's a way to support that. My next round, I have a class associated with Chakra Empowerment for Women, and the next round of that will be starting in late January. I'm in the middle of my second round of it right now. It'll be starting in late January, and that will be posted on my website and on my email list.
My joy. I easily express my sadness. I am an excellent communicator. I listen to others in a spirit of pure intent. I am free to vocalize my experiences.
Thank you, Melissa and Melanie, for inviting me to be a part of this event, this most important event. I know that the timing of it is divine because of what is going on in the world, and there's a big shift underway. And as we look at all of the forces that are on the planet right now, and so many of them are geared toward the oppression of women. And so this couldn't have happened at a better time, that all of these powerful goddesses coming together, coming and sharing their wisdom, their medicine, their knowledge. So I'm very grateful to be here. And you're absolutely right. I had the vision when I meditated. What Spirit told me was that I needed to do something to honor the souls of Black women, as well as all women of color and conscious. And, you asked a little bit more about my work. I'm also a Yoruba priestess, an Ianifa, as well as a presiding priestess of an international spiritual community called Ile Ori Agbe Egun, and also founder and director of the I Teach Love Institute. So I kind of split my work between those, and the writing stuff, and it keeps me very, very busy. Today, we're going to do what I call a ritual remembering. So we are going to actually tap into the energy of remembering our sacredness, who we are, the divine perfection in which we were created. We're going to do some affirmation work. We're going to speak some affirmations for ourselves. In the Yoruba Ifa tradition, we have something called Ori, O-R-I. And the Ori is located right at the very center top point of the head. And it is said that that is the strongest divine holy energy that we walk with, is our own Ori, our own spiritual consciousness. And that is where all of our healing starts from. We know that there are a lot of energies, yes, in the world right now that want to oppress women, that also support the exploitation of women, our sexuality, not to in any way diminish our right to love, to be loved as we choose, but also looking at the energy of discernment and how we project the energy of our sexuality and how it is projected of us, and in particular, Black women, because there is a very big history of Black women being exploited sexually, from Venus Hottentot, who of course was a Black woman, who was a very buxom Black woman, who was kept in a cage and viewed like a museum piece for years. To now we have a video that has been watched by millions that basically classifies women by the state of their vagina. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having a nice, moist vagina. But that should not be how you are defined, how any woman is defined. And so that's why I wanted also to do the ritual remembering today as a way to counter that energy and to support the intention of the Sacred Body Summit to fully turn women up, for them to tap into the seat of their power that is located in the womb space. All life, no life can be here. And I heard a speaker say this earlier, without a woman. So that means that our souls, our spirits, our manifestation is among the most sacred on the planet. And it must be treated as such. And as long as there is any acceptance or lack of recognition of the wounds that are being caused to women, no one will be free. The planet cannot be healed without the honoring of women, and in particular, Black women, women of African descent, women from the Caribbean, from the diaspora, because they have faced some of the worst oppression. And certainly they aren't the only ones. When we look at the other world atrocities, such as the Jewish Holocaust and many others, we know that this is something that has permeated society, and we continue to fight it and make the changes. But today, we are going to engage our own Ori, our own spiritual body, and heal ourselves first. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And also start to pass on the spirit of healing to our beloved sisters. Okay? So I want to do an opening prayer and intention setting. And in the Yoruba Ifa tradition, we pour water. And the pouring of water is a very sacred act, and is done by other cultures as well. So I'm going to pour water to the earth. I have a plant here, little aloe vera. So we're just going to give her, so we don't waste that H2O. Omi tutu, ona tutu, ile tutu, tutu leroye, kosi ku, kosi oro, kosi ofo, kosi inka baruku oruku babawa, moyuba olofi oloruna ludamari, bigo iku imbalese aludamari I go. Orishas, ancestors, we give homage to you on this day. We recognize and we invite your presence here. We ask for you to bless the Sacred Body Summit, We ask for you to bless the organizers, oh great mothers, to bless all of the speakers, to bless all of the participants, to touch them wherever they are right here and right now, to touch their spirit. If there is anyone that needs healing, great mothers, I call upon you to be present, to begin this healing journey with us. And we set intentions, oh great mothers, grandmothers, great grandmothers, oh indigenous grandmothers. We call upon you. And we know that you stand with us. And we ask you today to join us in the intention of healing and empowerment for women all over the planet, not just in America, but in the Middle East, in Africa, in India, and every place in Mexico, in every place that women live and girls live. I ask you, great mothers, to touch them and to bring healing to the planet. Let no more injuries take place without justice against our beloved. And in particular today, I want to honor the spirit of two of my fallen comrades, Sandra Bland, who was a Spelman and Prairie View University student who got pulled over for a routine traffic stop and somehow ended up dead at the precinct, as well as Breonna Taylor, the EMT that was murdered in her sleep as a result of the misuse of police power. So in particular, I want to lift up their spirits. I want to lift up the spirit of my trans sister, Nia Wilson, who was senselessly murdered in a Bay Area subway by someone who was filled with rage and anger. So I pray for the souls of these three women and that their lives not be in vain, and that none of our lives and what we have gone through and are going through, that those struggles are not in vain. And I speak healing for our daughters and their daughters and the daughters to come that aren't born yet. And I know that this work that we are doing will have an impact. And I speak it so. It's already done. 7 generations forward and 7 generations backward. Let the healing commence. And so it is. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Give thanks. So our attention, we have the power, my sisters, to speak intentions over our bodies, over our minds, our hearts, and our surroundings. And there comes a time in our life that we must master the art of saying no. And especially when the heart is screaming no, but the mouth keeps saying yes. We must master the art of saying no. And sometimes we need to scream it. No! We must speak it. Guiltless. We must recognize all of the ashe, all of the fire, all of the strength that we walk with, and that our grandmothers and great-grandmothers stand by us. We must speak for ourselves. And I'm hearing that very strongly today as I begin to channel the prayer and the work that we are doing. I also want to speak abundance. It would be years when I began doing my work as an activist and a priestess before I recognized that healing me was an important part of the equation. And that if I was suffering, that if I was doing without, that I was doing my work out of balance. And I had to learn, my sisters, to pour from the overflow. I had to learn to recognize the value of what I do, the divinity and sacredness of the medicine that I carry. And it was through that that I truly began to heal and come into my power. And so I want to invite you now to set intentions for yourself. If you have your journal with you, you can write those intentions down in your journal. You can also speak them into the universe, whether it is abundance, whether you have a health challenge that you are facing, whether you have a relationship challenge that you are facing, Whether you've been trying to do a project or launch a product and you've hit obstacle after obstacle, I want to encourage you to look at how you value yourself. Because so often the universe and the world will mirror what we feel about ourselves. And so we must always begin by looking within. So I want you to set intentions for yourself, and don't be shy, and don't do it in a spirit of limitation. Do it in a spirit of abundance. Don't limit it. Because so often when we set intentions for ourselves, we start by feeling guilty. Oh, I shouldn't ask for that. Oh, that's too much to ask. Or how am I going to ask the universe for that? Oh, I want to live in a house on the beach. Oh, I want to, travel the world. Oh, I don't want to do anything for anybody for a year. Oh, but what are people going to do, right? I want you, my sisters, to give yourself permission to live your best life. Whatever it is you desire, give yourself permission right now and right here by speaking your intentions for you. Take 2 minutes and speak. You don't have to say it out loud. You can say this part to yourself. We are going to do some calling of the names in just a minute. And Melissa's going to open up the lines for people to speak the names of women that they know need healing, as well as yourself, if you need healing. We're going to wind that down. Write down your intentions. Remember, what you put on that paper, you have the power to manifest. What you speak in the universe right now, you have the power to manifest. The universe is looking at your paper. The ink has power. Your words have power. That's why the ancients always taught us to be careful what we speak. Because if we speak the negative, we can manifest it. We call it, in the Yoruba tradition, Ofo Ashe. Everybody say Ofo Ashe. Ofo Ashe is a powerful medicine. It's a medicine that our grandmamas used to use. It's a medicine that our aunties used to use, our mamas used to use. So they would speak something and tell us, you're going to be somebody. Might have been in another situation where somebody spoke negative energy over us. Part of this ritual is to undo that, okay? Because we can change that path. We can change our destiny. Now that you've written your intentions, what we want is for you to put them somewhere that you can see them regularly. I can't tell you how positive of a force this was for me. 7 books ago, when I wrote my first book, and I had never written a book before, I didn't know if I could do it. Some of you know my story, who are my sisters who are on this call. I got the idea to write that first book, The Sacred Door, A Spiritual Guide to Power Living. And I, wrote down the 12 chapters, the first 12 chapters. And before I know it, I had, an outline created for those 12 chapters. And I was working at the time as a human resources director for a top corporation. I was making very good money, very stable job and career. But I knew it was not my life work. I knew it was not what I was here to do. And I knew, like I know my own name, that I had to write this book. So I wrote that book, and the rest is, as they say, history. Because 6 months after I wrote that book, I got a phone call from a major television and film network. And I thought someone was playing a joke on me. I thought it was a prank. And I hung up on the woman, and she called me back, thank God. And she said, this is a producer from, blah, 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 blah. And we got a hold of your book, and we want to talk to you about coming and being, starring in a television show. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, well, I'm 42. I'm not a size 2. Are you sure you want me? They're like, we're going to fly you in to LA. We want you. And I ended up getting the part, and ended up traveling the world with this television show. It got picked up internationally. It was the beginning of the reality TV show culture. And it's one of those things, those stories that you tell your grandchildren. You'll never do it again, but you tell your grandchildren about the story about when Granny was on a reality show. But the blessing and the healing that came for me was, one, seeing how the universe supports intentions. Now, this is a true story. Literally, I had spoken to my family that December. I got the call, I think, in January, February. I had spoken to my family that I was going to be starring in a national television show, a syndicated television show. And my family, because, I've always been that special child. So my family was like, here she goes. Okay, sure you are. So I had spoken it. The universe heard me. I set the intention. I went about, just doing my work. Next thing I know, I'm getting the phone call. Next thing I know, I find out I got the part. So just look at that succession of things. Spoke it, set the intention, followed through, done my work, because, it's opportunity meets preparedness. So if I hadn't been obedient, and there's many of you who are on this call that are powerhouses, and you're sitting on products and projects that are mega, and they're your destiny. They're what you're here to do. But for whatever reasons, usually it's because of fear, you have not followed all the way through and taken it to the highest height. And so this ritual, I call it a ritual remembering, is to awaken, yes, that intention in you and to move you into action to manifest your best life. Okay? So you've written your intention and you've looked it over. You're going to put it somewhere where you can see it all the time, at least for the next moon cycle. So 30 days from today. Okay? I want you to look at that intention. If you didn't get a chance to write it while I was going through the exercise, you can do it after the conference. But I want each of you to commit to setting your intentions. Okay? And now we're going to do the next part of it, which is to activate that Ofo Ashe. Remember, I talked about the power of the tongue and the breath? We call it Emi, E-M-I, in the Yoruba Ifa tradition. And your breath, yes, is directly connected to your destiny in life. Your breath has a spiritual imprint, not only of your DNA, but of the destiny that you are here to fulfill. So we're going to call forth that destiny right now. And we're going to speak the names of the Black women and the other women of color and conscious who need healing and honoring. And I'm going to ask each of you, and I'm going to ask Melissa to please unmute the phones, to start with your own name today. And I'll start first. Ianifa, Ifalade, TaShia, Asanti. Ashel, done. And I see names coming in here. Yes, all tears, yes. Yes. Every time, every name that was spoken into the universe today, understand the sound, yes, of your name has a vibration. And as you speak those names, you're putting it into the universe. Now, I just want you in your own space to begin to speak the names of those in your life, or you can put them in the chat. And all of those indigenous ancestors. And it's already done. And in particular, we know that we lift up and we speak justice for Breonna Taylor. She should not be dead. She should be planning her wedding and going on with her life. Sandra Bland should not be dead. She should be graduating from college and moving into her career. And we speak change into the universe. And we speak the recognition and healing of all women and girls all over the planet. And we know that it is already done. And if you agree, join me in saying Ashe Yedeni. And Ashe means in Yoruba, may it be so. So just join that intention by saying Ashe. And now I want to, the candle is lit, and I want to present this light. I'm going to let this light burn throughout the conference and until it burns out, to solidify your prayers, to solidify the intentions. Know that this light will be burning with my orishas and my ancestors for all of those names that we spoke today, for all of our upliftment and healing, that it is already done, that no weapon formed against women or girls shall prosper, that we will be honored, that we will be respected. And anyone who steps outside of that will be held and tried not only in the physical court, but in the spiritual court. We are done with women being mistreated. And so I speak it into the universe, knowing that the mothers stand here with us and guide us. And in particular to my African sisters, my sisters of the diaspora, I speak healing over you. May you see your crown, touch your crown, queens. I want you to put your head on your ori and remember your crown. And Santa says, all child sexual abuse survivors, we pray in particular for them and lift up their spirits. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And the candle is hereby submitted today at 2:30, October 25th, 2020. I shall submit it and present it to the altar. And I also have a beautiful quartz crystal that belonged to my mother. And not quartz, amethyst. And I'm gonna submit this and sit this next to the candle for our healing and to evolve and transform the negating energy into the positive energy. Okay, I'm gonna put that on the altar. And I speak abundance. And I speak to the ori of each of the sisters who are on this call, that you tap today into your magnificent locomotive ability to manifest what you want for yourself, that it is already done, that nothing can stop you, that no weapon formed against you shall prosper, that you shall rise to your highest height, that you shall be loved and be loved, that you shall have optimal health, that you will make your own healing the priority, that you will not give unless your cup has an overflow, that we will set a new paradigm for the women healers, that they will be honored, that they will be compensated, that they will be spoken to and recognized for their divinity. And I speak this to your ori, each of you who are healers, and that is all of you. Because if you live in a woman's body, we already know all of us carry healing medicine, and all of our medicines move in the divine way. So I speak to your ori just as I speak to mine. It is activated. Stand in it. Be it. See yourself as who you came here to be. No one owns your power but you. Ashe. 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 Woo! All right. Now we're getting to the good. We're going to go to the womb, my sisters. So all of you were instructed to have a little sacred oil there. If you don't worry about it. You can use your own saliva. That is a holy oil. But if you have a nice sweet oil, go ahead and put a little bit on your hands. And I want you to rub your healing hands together. Iya Oyaseke loves this part. She loves to do this work. One of the things that we do in my community is we do a lot of work with the womb, because there is a lot of work that's centered in that area of a woman's body. A lot of us That's why we see the fibroids, we see the, a lot of the illnesses that we face are centered in the womb. And that's because that's our power center. So when we treat or we work with a woman who's really having a challenge breaking through, then we'll take it to the womb. And so my partner will do things like make a set of sacred power beads, waist beads, that are consecrated and blessed, and done a whole lot of healing work on them, so that women can really begin to tap into that power and also shift the energy in their womb space. Okay. But we're going to do a little light blessing today. And so you got your little oil or you got your saliva, and I want you to take your hands and put them on your womb. Okay. Just lay them right there on your womb. There are women who were shamed into believing that their yoni was something nasty or bad. And so, as a result, they had feelings about their own sex or sexuality or pleasure, and didn't come to know the joy and the pleasure of their womb space. And so part of the healing process is to reclaim that, because this is the Sacred Body Summit. What? And we are reclaiming our feminine power today. So put your hands on your womb, and we're going to change the energy, and we're going to put some energy, some healing energy, and some joy and bliss energy into our womb space. So come with me. Stay with me on this. So I want you to let it come up through your solar plex to your throat, and I want you to laugh. Wherever you are, in fact, everybody unmute your phones. I want to hear you laughing. Let it come up. Laugh. Let it out.
That's great.
Look at that vibration. Woo! Look at that vibration. Look at what we just put into the universe. Laughing women. Mute your phones back for me. And just let the vibration of laughter circulate in your home, in your space, and into the universe, wherever you are. That is an amazing exercise. Keep your hands on your womb, that you can do to lift the vibration whenever you're going through something tough or you're having a challenge. Put your hands on your womb and let your womb emit the energy and the vibration of laughter. And I'm going to give you one more powerful energy shifting exercise. And I learned this at a beautiful retreat that I was invited to with the Shift Network. I got to be one of the speakers, and it was absolutely incredible. And this is called oxytocin breathing. And so most of us as women, all we know how to do is either fight or flight. And especially my sisters, my Black sisters and women of color, because, walking out of the house can be like, you can lose your life. You can, lose your life for driving down the street or taking a jog or, so many things in so many ways. So you develop this consciousness of fight or flight. And so we want to shift that. And what I'm going to teach you is called oxytocin breathing. And it's a type of breathing that pregnant women are taught to do as they're giving birth to help release the pain. And this breathing can also shift your energy in a heartbeat. And so you want to breathe in through your nose And when you breathe out, you want to make this sound. Ah. So breathe in, and you're going to unmute. Let's unmute your phones again, because I want to hear that vibration.
Ah.
Yes. Do y'all hear that? Do y'all feel that vibration?
Yes.
That is the pleasure vibration. It's the release. You can mute your phones back now. It's neither fight nor flight. It is the release. It's called oxytocin breathing. You can Google it and learn more about it. And now this is the last part, and then we're going to open it up. I want you to put your hands back on your womb, and I want you to speak directly to your womb. You say, "Dear sacred womb, I love you. Thank you for blessing me. Thank you for giving me the gift of you. I hereby vow to honor you, to celebrate you, to uplift you, to treat you, to spoil you, to lavish you, and to never, ever betray or forget you again." And so it is. Ashe, ashe, ashe. And now bring your hands up. And you should feel a lot of warm energy. I want you to release. You're releasing the old. And now bringing in the new. You just did your sacred womb blessing. Okay. And now we're going to just do a little bit of remembering. And I want to ask you a question about your journey. And I want you to think about a time that you were in so much joy and so much bliss that you lost track of time. You looked up and you said, "Oh my God, it's 4 o'clock or it's 8 o'clock at night." What were you doing? I want you to put that in your notes if you can think of that time. And if you can't think of that time, then we got a different challenge. Because we all should have a memory of bliss and sheer joy. And if we don't, then we know what we got to do. Okay? That moment that you lost all track of time, what were you doing? So that is part of your destiny. You already know, my sister. Ashe. So that is part of your destiny, my sister. And Spirit says you must create more opportunities to do just that, to be in those places that light your spirit up and make you feel the happiest and the most bliss. Ashe. So beautiful, beautiful things. Anyone else?
Dancing.
Dancing. Oh, yes. I love dancing. In fact, today, after the conferences, we have one more fabulous, I think 2 more. No, we go till 6, I think. So we have some more fabulous sessions coming up. But I want all of y'all to put on your favorite music and get down with it and just feel it and move around and dance and take in all the joy. Because even in the middle of all that we are going through, we must look for the places that joy waits for us. Yes?
Yes.
Right? Yes, we must. Because I tell you, that was something that I got. I had been an activist for many, many years, a civil rights activist. And one day I heard a speaker say that they were spending less time talking about what they were against and they were focusing on cultivating what they were for. And I was like, oh my God, it resonated with me. It's like, okay, I'm talking about racism. I'm talking about all these things that I'm against, sexism and patriarchy. But how about if I talk about love, right? Because I know what I'm against, but because what you give energy to grows. So let me start focusing. That's why I changed my name to Love, because I wanted people to greet me in love, and I wanted to be remembered as love. And when people interact with me, I wanted to force them to remember and center on the energy of love. And so I still use my ritual names in other circles. And of course, my writing name is TaShia Asanti. But using the name Love has helped to really reconfigure a lot of energy in my life and in my spirit. And it's not easy in a world like this because I'm a fighter. But if that isn't balanced, and thankfully I have two individuals in my life who really won't let me stay in it too long because I can get caught in the injustice. And so I'm able to move out of it and get back to the love. And that's one of the things I want to say to all of you warrior sisters who are on this call. Don't forget to experience the love. Don't forget to experience the joy. And here's the key to know if you're in balance. Start paying attention, right, to how much you complain. That's how you'll be able to delineate whether you're in balance with it. So if you have a conversation, is 50% of that conversation you venting or you complaining about something or someone, right? Because if it is, that's too much. You know, we all have our moments where we just need to get it out. But if that is your vibration all the time, you're missing something. So we're coming to our close. We got about 12 more minutes. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask before we do the closing, release, and remembering prayer?
Thank you, Love. I wanted to just ask you, how can people follow you? That was so beautiful. Your voice is so soothing, so powerful. Thank you. I cried a few times. It touched my soul. So thank you. This was so sacred and beautiful. And
Thank you so much.
Just brought it all together. So people that want more of you, what should they do?
I am, of course, I am presiding priestess of Ile Ori Agbe Egum. I am a master diviner and master intuitive. So I do life readings and tuning in readings and all kind of stuff like that. We initiate people to the Ifa tradition who are interested in learning more. I also am a performing artist. So I perform my award-winning spoken word all over the country at events. Some of you may have heard my poem that I wrote for President-elect Joe Biden, which is what I'm hoping, and Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris. So that's out circulating and trending on YouTube. So I would be glad to come and read spoken word for your event or glad to work with you. I am a success planner. So I help people manifest what they dream of and what they dream of being and doing. And that is my love. And I also am a book doctor. So I work with other writers to get their book out. Oh, thank you, Santa. She's great. So I've helped 19 authors get their books written and published so far. And that is a work I really, really love and enjoy because it's like birthing a new baby every time. So you can find me at www.officialtashiaasanti.com. And you can contact me through my website. You can also email me at allthewords. All the words. Of course, I'm a journalist by trade at AOL.com. Okay. So I would love to hear from any of you. And we absolutely want to support this work, the Sacred Body Summit. This is historic. This, the inaugural event. I'm so honored to be a part of the inaugural event. And I know that, this is just the beginning. This is going to be like a global, we're going to have 1 million women before we get through.
Thank you.
And, Meloney and Melissa, you two have just done an incredible job with the powerhouses that you've brought together. So I just affirm you and uplift you. And I know the universe is going to manifest everything you need to make this even larger in 2021. Ashe.
Ashe.
So we're going to do our closing release and remembering. And this is just a prayer for all of our spirits and to uplift us, to heal us, and to remind us so that it becomes like a spiritual tattoo on your spiritual body. Because remember, this is the Sacred Body Summit, and this is our temple. This is our healing vessel right here. And so I want y'all to put your arms around yourself, give yourself a hug, put your arms around yourself. And if you're really feeling bold, lean over and kiss yourself. Just give yourself a little pet. Okay? And when you get up in the morning, I want you to look in your eyes. So often when we get dressed, we don't really pay attention to ourselves. We just, and we run out of the bathroom. But stop and take a moment and look in your own eyes and tell yourself, I love you. Fall in love with you. And, if you have to take a shower, a bath, or whatever it is, but when you take a shower, let the suds just kind of roll down your arm and your leg, and just do your arm and your leg like those old Hollywood movie stars used to do. You know how the suds used to just float down their arms? Let it float down your arm like you are just that amazing star, because you are. This is a ritual remembering for all my queens. May you always know the energy of love. May you always know the energy of abundance. May you always know the energy of your freedom. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Let us remember. And we are closed. And we release the energy of all the spirits who came, release you back to the universe, to your respective quarters, so that you can continue doing work for our healing. And we thank you for coming. We thank you for your healing powers. We thank you for your blessings of us in our life. And we release you as we close out this ritual, knowing and giving thanks for all that you have brought to us, all that you have removed from us, and all that you have left us with to work from. Oh, Ashe. We are done. Ashe.
You are beautifully and uniquely you, a perfect piece of the whole. Give yourself permission to be who you are, here, right now. Be beautifully you.
A little bit more about me is that I actually can't see. I have a tiny little bit of vision, which is all peripheral, and I've learned through yoga and the practices of simple empowerment from within to really be okay with what is, even if an outcome or an uncertainty, is there. It exists. I was told when I was originally given the information about my vision loss that I would be blind within 3 to 7 years. And I still have about 8% of my eyesight. And it's now been over 25 years ago. So I do believe the mind, the body, and everything that can be integrated as far as affirmations, like Love was speaking about, and the power of the healing. And if you get the correct modality, and yoga and pranayama and therapeutic aspects of yoga really helped me along the way. So that's a little bit more about me. In the tradition of yoga that I study and have been studying for a very long time, Krishnamacharya or Sri T. Krishnamacharya, that is the lineage I come from, we also have a ritual of lighting a candle at the beginning of the practice. And I would like to do the same with my candle. And in this, the fire of the light of the candle represents something that we call tapas, which is the work or the purification or whatever is the goal that can be fulfilled. And that is the work that we're doing today all together as a collective, which is so powerful in the Sacred Body Summit, but also as women to really uphold and uplift the planet and the universe, and to utilize our feminine power to do that. So this will go on my altar, which is way over here. I'm going to gently walk it over next to the plant that is embodied life. And today what we're going to do together is do a quick, semi-quick, a short practice that helps to integrate all the information, this wise teaching from beginning info from Meloney all the way up through all the speakers before with Ava and Lisa and Love. And more to come afterwards. But pranic integration, when you think of prana, it is the life force that's held within us, and it's carried by the breath. So we're going to integrate our minds, our bodies, our breaths, and explore what the 5 aspects of our being. And I'll explain that a little bit more. But we're going to do this as an experiential. I will guide you. It will be a seated practice to a standing practice to possibly getting down on the floor. If you don't want to stand, you don't want to move, you just want to simply experience, then follow along as best you can. We will start seated in a chair, unless you're really, really comfortable sitting on the floor. And we'll begin there. And my practice is called Yoga Gently, and it's for a reason. Because in healing of any kind, a gentle approach can actually be the most fulfilling and most capable of offering a sense of deep wellspring of tapping into your own sense of connection in a very appropriate way. So everything that's done today, please take into consideration whatever is appropriate for you. And beginning with a seated position, typically when we sit, we kind of let the chair absorb us. And instead, allow yourself to sit, feet on the floor firmly planted, your seat firmly planted, and observe where the positioning of your body is. If your knees are up high because the chair is actually too low, or you're sitting in a sagging couch or something like that, prop it up so that your hips are almost in the same line as the thighs. So you might be a little bit higher to give a little bit more freedom for that openness of that second chakra that Lisa talks so beautifully about, and the womb that love represents, that we did that beautiful womb work. So allow there to be freedom rather than compression. We want a sense of expansiveness through that life force of our feminine power. So start there. Sometimes the feet tuck under our thighs, and that can put undue pressure on the knees. You want to place your feet firmly. Your hands can rest lightly on the lap or even at the belly, surrounding the navel center, or still resting on that area of the womb if you like. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. And if not, simply have a soft focus. With the eyes closed, simply find, how are you breathing right now? And we've already been through a couple cycles of really powerful breath work. We're going to keep adding to that. Breathe in through your nose if you can. And breathe out through your nose if you can. For now, if that seems like an unnatural breath, again, do what feels natural to you. When you inhale, the idea is that you might be bringing in nourishment. Receive your breath with gratitude. And when you breathe out, soften, settle, but at the same time, feel that sense of drawing in the navel towards the spine. This creates your own internal stability. There's a rise and a fall of the breath in and out. Can you find that? And sometimes it's not possible to find that. It may be in your nature and in your experiences of your life that this is not something that is felt yet. Maybe you are in that disembodied sense that Lisa was speaking about a little bit. Breathe in and out as best you can. Feel the sensations of your breath. And then simply consider while you're here, what is your intention for being here today? What do you hope to gain from the experience of being here? And even in this moment, simply by participating in this particular part of our speaking engagement, what do you hope to gain? And allow that to be an intention that sets from your mind down towards your heart center and deep down into what resonates for you in this moment. As you acknowledge yourself for being here and being part of the collective energy of today, recognize that. And then, in addition, remind yourself from here on through the rest of this practice that I'm guiding you through, allow your breath to be your guide. Let it lead the way. Do only what's appropriate for you within the movements that we are going to discover together. On your next inhale, you might open your eyes. You're going to bring your hands in front of you and interlace your fingers. And when you interlace your fingers, let the webbing of the fingers merge together if you can. And as you exhale, squeeze gently. You can squeeze and hurt yourself, but squeeze until you feel a little bit of pressure, maybe some warmth. There might even be a sense of suction between the palms. When you next inhale, let your palms extend in front of you. Feel that reach, but a sense of release towards the shoulders. And then release the hands. Bring the hands together. This time, change the interlacing of your fingers. We naturally kind of do one thing. We're a little bit more dominant on one side or the other. Change the interlacing of the fingers. So whichever thumb was on top, moving on bottom. You can do it slowly or fast. You might switch and that forefinger can go on the next. But when you do that, everything else has to shift. Breathe in. While you exhale, squeeze lightly. Keep that sense of connection on the exhale. And then when you inhale, reach forward while at the same time letting the shoulders settle. And then when you exhale, release, shake your hands out a little bit. Take a long breath in through your nose if possible. And we like to breathe in and out through the nose to help calm the system. A sympathetic breath, which is usually up in the top of the lungs, very short, shallow breath. You might even hear a kind of sniffing sound. Instead, you want a little bit deeper breath down towards that lower part of the lungs, towards the solar plexus, towards the belly, towards the feet. And what we're going to do next is when you breathe in, have your hands just a little bit higher than the belly, but underneath the chest. And there's a concavity or the rib cage that's there. Let your fingertips rest between the top ribs. And not the upper ribs, but that little cage. Breathe in and out in that position. And if you can get a little bit deeper breath, and if you're able to feel that expansive quality of the inhale, breathe. And while you're breathing in, let your hands move downward. And that's where your breath is mimicking. You're going to try and encourage your breath to go downward. And then when you exhale, you can lift your hands back up to that centered place just under the chest. And do this again 2 more times. Breathe in, gently reach down while you're also sitting up a little taller. Maybe push into your feet and push into your seat. Breathe out through your nose if you can and bring your hands to rest just below the chest again. On your next inhale, let your one hand stay where it is, one hand move down. And then as that hand moves down, let the other hand move up. And so you're going to go back and forth with your breath. As the inhale happens, your one hand is moving down This time the other hand can move up a little bit higher and rest at the top of the chest. And as you exhale, you're going to keep going. So that even though you're breathing in and the movement is going down, there's still a sensation of uplifting. And even though you're breathing out and the breath is moving up, there's still a sense of settling. We'll do a few more cycles like this. If you feel very natural, if you're one of those natural dancers and you feel like moving your arms, how it might be represented in your breath, feel free. Or if you like those more simple movements, or if you even prefer, I don't really like moving, but I'd rather feel that connection, or you can simply be with your hands and let your arms be in that expansion and settling. So you choose for another full cycle of breath, whatever arm movements are going to represent your inhale, which lifts up even though the breath is moving down, and your exhale, which settles your body down even though the breath lifts up and out of the body. Your next inhale, both arms lift up and out to the side. And then when you exhale, bring your palms to rest at the top of the chest, below the throat center. And then do that one more time. Out to the sides. Inhale as that expansion. Bring in that vital energy, receiving the breath. Fulfill yourself in this moment. And then exhale, connect. And then when you next inhale, reach your right leg out as you reach your left arm out. And then when you exhale, bring yourself back to your centered position. Again, if you want a different hand position, you choose it. You're going to reach your opposites. Right now, your heel could be down. Your exhale connects you back to wherever you feel most comfortable in a centered position. As you breathe in, expand opposite limb. As you breathe out, slow the exhale down and pause. Inhale, fluid reach of the prana. You're welcoming that life force of prana to go everywhere in the body. And then connect as you exhale, that sense of settling. Last cycle. The next time you're in that pause position, choose where you feel the most rooted into your seat. And if you feel like as you're starting to move, you're starting to slide backwards and move into that collapsed position, possibly get a blanket or a towel or a pillow or something to support you, to keep you in that uplifted spinal extension. So that when you next inhale, you can reach your right leg and your left arm out to the side and in front of you, and you're going to hold that position. And as you breathe in, you're going to lift the arm and the leg a little bit more. And as you breathe out, you're going to softly relax. If you feel like you want a little bit more energizing, you can keep the leg lifted off the floor. If you need that support and that sense of release, because the exhale helps to process, to rest and digest, take advantage of the exhale. So you choose 2 more times. Up as you inhale, whatever appropriate movement is, and down as you exhale. Last one, up on the inhale, exhale. Now your next inhale, when you feel that right leg lift, and even if the foot's on the floor, that's fine, and the left arm reaches, stay in that position. You're going to hold here steadily without too much exertion. Find an effortlessness. As you inhale, look at your left fingers, wiggle them. When you exhale, look at your right toes and wiggle them without anything else helping. This is to help neural pathways. Inhale, enhance, look at your fingers, wiggle them. That prana vayu activated, a little more prana. Exhale, the apana vayu engaged. The toes are wiggling. At the end of your exhale, take a moment, rest back at center. And even before we go to the next pair of opposites, close your eyes for 1 or 2 breaths. Unless you prefer to let your eyes stay open with a soft focus. Notice any subtle differences between your right toes, your right foot, your right leg, compared to the left toes, left foot, and left leg. How is your breath now? How different is it? Consider your right fingers, hand, and arm compared to your left fingers, hand, and arm. Take a long inhale. Open your eyes if they're not already. You're going to reach left leg and right arm this time. Find that appropriate positioning. So if you reach way up and it's hurting your neck, adjust it. As you breathe in, lift the opposite arm and leg. When you exhale, lower. And follow your breath. Your inhale, that vibrant energy. Move the tips of the toes, the tips of the fingers, up through the crown of the head, to the feet, in all directions. Lift. You choose where you want to stay. And in that holding position, again, if you have to adjust, please do. If you feel like you're grinding your teeth to stay where you are, if it hurts your back, something isn't quite right, you come back into a place of where it feels appropriate. On your inhale, look at your right fingers. Can you move those fingers around without anything else helping? Turn your head. Exhale through your nose if you can. Move in your toes. And repeat. Inhale, fingers. Exhale, toes. The opposites. Now lower your arm and your leg. And again, go back to that place of what's noticeable in this moment. We're activating your physical body. And I mentioned earlier, 5 aspects of your being. Here, we're addressing your physical body. When you inhale next, reach your arms out to the sides. And with your exhale, cross your arms, either at the forearms or the upper arms, and lightly squeeze from the top of the shoulder down through the upper arms, through the forearms, to your hands, and then release. Open inhale. Cross your arms in the other direction, and you might have to think, well, how did I cross before? You might not notice, but whichever feels best, and do the same thing. A little hug, acknowledging yourself for being here, a gentle awareness of your arms and your hands, and release. And then back to how are you breathing right now? Can you breathe a little bit more with some vibrant energy, upholding you? And there's something called the sympathetic and the parasympathetic response to the body. And the parasympathetic response is really that ability to be more calm. And there was a question earlier when Melissa said, well, what about breath work? The most important part of breath work is that it's appropriately received. So if you find you're doing this breath work and it starts to trigger things, come back to a place where you're in a sense of rest and digest, that moment of pause. Here, if you are going to join us for standing part, you're going to move a little bit forward in your chair. Feet on the floor, arms can be by your sides or at the lap. Your inhale, remember that full breath in. You're trying to fill all the way to the bottommost part of the lungs. The greatest oxygen receptors, the percentage of oxygen receptors reside in the lowest part of our lungs. Oftentimes we only breathe up here in the short, shallow part of our lungs. This is why we have so much anxiety. Ooh, sympathetic breath. Deep abdominal breath, parasympathetic breath. Remember that. When you next exhale, breathe out with a long SH sound to your breath. A little bit of sound helps to elongate the exhale. And as you do so, consider the pelvic floor is engaged. There's a sense of support from your Yoni region, from that sense of connection. Connect with that as you exhale with the shh. And then you're going to maintain that support as you exhale and move to a half standing position. Exhale for a half chair. Inhale, stay there if you can. If you need a little bit more support, then you can lift yourself up a little higher. If you can, this might be a challenge for you. Start to lower yourself back down to your chair. If you don't know where your chair is, use your fingertips to find it and then lower yourself down. You might even need to hold on. We're going to lift and lower a couple more times. Your inhale keeps you in that vibrant expression of your breath. Your exhale roots you into that stability of that second chakra, and you're going to lift yourself up. Stay for your inhale. If you're really comfortable here, you might reach your arms out to the side. If you're really comfortable here and you feel like, the strength of my legs, you're creating stability here. You can breathe in, drop your seat a little more where you raise your arms. And you can go back and forth. Again, I give you a couple options. You can lower back down. You can simply sit in your chair and imagine embodying that strength. Or you might go a couple cycles where you inhale for the fullness and you exhale for that sense of support and stability and feeling that sense of empowerment within the muscles of your legs. One last time, if you're comfortable in that half-seated chair pose position, you can stay there. Your arms might be up a little higher. They may be a little lower. They might be resting on your thighs. Stay and breathe if you can. One more big, long, deep breath. We're helping to embody more of that prana. And if you didn't already, lower yourself back down into your seated position. Checking in again. Notice, be aware. How are you expressing yourself from within? First, we talked about physical body. Then the breath has an aspect, and it's the most vital part of you. And when you are depleted of energy, you have lost that connection with the prana. In order to actually be able to combat or help prevent that depletion of all your prana going outward, it's important to refill the vessel. Be where you can be in this moment of breath. Experience that. How many times a day do you sit quietly in stillness and welcome that life force that flows within you? A 5-minute breath break makes all the difference. If you're comfortable standing, you want to bring your elbows in towards your ribs or hip points. This gives you a little bit of connection to that width of the inhale and that global expanse of the breath. And if you feel very comfortable, you can let the eyes gently close. And what happens when you close your eyes, you have to rely on your own embodied sight, because this is your proprioceptive system now that has to kick in. Where is my body in space? Open your eyes right away if you feel very wobbly, or if the whole world started to spin. Open your eyes. Reset the planting of your feet, the connection of your elbows. This gives you a little bit of reminder of where you are. And then try it again. Allow your eyes to close. Can you still breathe fully? Feeling the length of the spine, the width of your essence in all directions. And then consider, how often do you second guess yourself? Be in this moment where you acknowledge all the choices that you made from here on out brought you to this moment. Our next position, step a little bit wider. And in that wide stance position, you're acknowledging that, yes, you can stand solidly where you are in your mountain pose, or a little bit closer, more classically. Or can you stand in that stability as your feminine power with your feet, your hips a little wider, your feet planted? We're going to get a little more depth of breath here. On your inhale, breathe into your feet. Sometimes what happens is the legs get locked. So if you notice that you tend to lock your knees, have a little bend to the knees. As you next inhale, reach your arms out to the side. Feel that expansive energy outward. When you exhale, you're going to pull your elbows in to remember that you must keep a little bit of your energy inward. You got to refuel your vessel before you can let your energy out. So we're going to do one more like that. Exhale, draw the energy and feel the support of the pelvic floor. Inhale, arms open out to the sides. Stay there this time with the exhale in that wide open position. Then when you next inhale, raise your right arm up. Let your left arm lower down. You might even lean a little bit. We're going to expand those right ribs. Come back to release. Inhale, open position. Stay for your exhale. When you next inhale, left arm lifts up, your right arm might lower down. If it feels comfortable, you're pressing into your left foot and you're elongating the whole left side. Come back to your center. Exhale. Stay for your inhale. Deep breath. Exhale. Arm lower, arm raises. This time you're going to stay and inhale more. Reach over, elongate that right side of the body. Stay for your exhale. You might soften the shoulder. You might even keep your elbow bent because you're reaching your ribs. On your next inhale, you might reach both arms. Then exhale back to your neutral position. Last cycle, inhale, open arms out to the side, that expansive sense. When you exhale, lower your arm down. Continue that sense of lowering and releasing as you're raising up. Inhale, expand a little bit more. Stay for your exhale. You might relax the shoulder. You might even look down at your right toes. Inhale, reach both arms if you can in whatever manner feels comfortable. And then exhale, neutral. Once you're exhale and neutral again, bring your feet to parallel. You might even bring your palms to touch at your heart center or your hands to rest at the upper chest, just below the throat. Stand and breathe. And observe. Can you feel your feet? What do you notice? Is there a sense of heat that you? Is there a sense of freedom that may have occurred? The pranic integration, mind, body, breath, 5 aspects of your being, personality, and that sense of deep connection. I thank you. Namaste. And namaste means the divine light within me recognizes, acknowledges, honors the divine light within you. Thank you for sharing. This is a little flyer. If you want it, please print it or put it on your wall or put it on your, however you want to do it. Remember all those 5 aspects of your being. I'm at Yoga Gently. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you contact me on that contact sheet, if you put Sacred Body Summit or Reclaim Your Feminine Power in that little comment section, I will offer you a free class. So connect, and I have my listing on my website, Yoga Gently, if you want to check out what the classes are that I offer. Okay.
Thank you so much, Sonya.
And thank you, Melissa, for doing this. This is so amazing. And thanks to all the presenters that are part of this, and for Meloney, and
I'm free
for
to
all of
vocalize
you
my
that have
experiences.
here and to share this beautiful experience.
All of these affirmations have soaked deep into your subconscious mind that will help you.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm here to talk to you about a thought that I had for a long time ago, which was that faking orgasms is causing the demise of civilization. And I know that may sound weird, and especially since we're going to be talking about feminine leadership and communication, but bear with me. So for anybody who's ever faked one or who's had it faked on them, you have to wonder why. Why would anybody do that? Why would anybody fake an orgasm? Well, the main reason is to make the other person happy, but at the expense of ourselves. We're either trying to get it done. We want to go to sleep. We're not going to get there anyway. So we're not holding the space for ourselves to just tell the truth, like, I'm kind of finished here. So I had that thought, and I was really ruminating, and I kind of got mad about faking orgasms. And that led me to on a journey of thinking about how people communicate and how much people don't communicate their actual truth, the actual thing that's really happening for them in their life or in that moment. Like so many of us have conversations that never conclude. Like, for example, I used to date this guy, and we would get into arguments that never ended because he would say, "Oh, Tammy, I don't have the strength to have this conversation." And I was like, dude, you're 34, you're healthy. Like, how do you not have the strength to carry on this conversation to completion, right? So, so this is something that I've noticed, that people, instead of talking to the person that they need to talk to about something, they talk to everybody else. People hire therapists instead of talking about the thing that they need to talk about, instead of taking that risk, and it feels like a risk. So along the way, I came to this understanding, which became the backbone of everything I do, of all of my work. And that backbone is a concept called being love versus seeking love. I know some of my clients are on the call. Thank you for coming. So you know about this, and we'll go over it again. So, so being love versus seeking love. So what this means is most people are actually in the world seeking love. And that person that's faking the orgasm, that person that's not having that conversation that needs to be had, that person that never has the strength to complete an argument, is in a state of seeking love. And it can look a lot of different ways. It can look like neediness. It can look like over functioning in your relationships, where you solicitously do everything for the other person. Oh no, don't do that. I'll take care of that. Don't worry, I'm gonna be a superhero and do all the work in the house. Or it can look like somebody who wants to control everything, and it just feels icky. Or it can look like all sorts of different ways. Seeking love shows up in all sorts of different ways. But underneath all of that, underneath the control, underneath bullying, underneath over-functioning, underneath it all is seeking love. We just have to figure out what the flavor of seeking love is. So for example, if we talk about bullying, most bullies are victims. They feel like they've been victimized. And if you hear the talk of a bully, like, oh, I'm the most hated person, or these people are really against me, or all of those people hurt me, so now I'm just going to hurt everybody else. And so those are the words of victim. So that's the flavor of seeking love that that person is going through. Another great example is control. I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell the truth about myself. I used to refold the towels on my ex-partner. Like, so if he folded the towels, it was not right. It was not good. And so I would refold the towels. So if you've ever refolded the towels, chances are you might have some control issues. Every control freak goes, well, there's only about so much space in the linen closet. There's only so much spot, right? And everybody has that, and there's always a reason. But ultimately, control usually comes back to needing to feel safe, that we need to feel safe in the world. And people, not always, but a lot of the time, who have control issues, their seeking love is seeking safety. Usually, back to childhood or situations that occurred. So that's the part of seeking love. So most people are in seeking love. The Dalai Lama seems to be doing great. The rest of us are struggling at certain levels. Okay, so what we want to be is being love. So when we're in a state of being love, we can hold the space for ourselves and other people at the same time. So what I mean by holding the space is, it doesn't necessarily mean that I change, but it means that I can allow someone else to have whatever feeling they're having. So many times I hear people say, don't cry, don't cry. Oh, don't cry. Often at big events, you have this big event, you prepared the whole thing, and then somebody cries and out of joy, and then, oh, don't cry. You did all this work so that they would have a human experience, right? But then we can't handle the crying up. So when we can hold the space for it, then we can actually hold the space for someone having their tears. Like, can you imagine if people just held the space for your tears, or you held the space for someone else's tears? And for a lot of people, you know, like me included, like when I was 19 or 20, I realized like anger scared the crap out of me. And I started doing personal growth work. And one of the places that I went was I was living in Vancouver, and there was all these beautiful people who were Rajneeshis from the Osho, from the, you know, and they were running these great workshops where you'd come in and you say, okay, now express your anger. And everybody's expressing their anger, except all I could do was weep and cry and cry and cry, because I couldn't even access my anger when I was 19, 20, 21 years old. I couldn't even get to it, right? So what if I could hold the space for not just my anger, but for someone else's anger? That's so powerful, right? That's when we can actually get to the end of a conversation. So that's a big part of being love. Being love, what being love doesn't mean is like being a doormat, because sometimes our ego tricks us to think that we're being love when we're actually seeking love. And we go, oh, okay, I'm just going to hold the space for this person, hold the space for that person's feelings, hold the space for what's going on with that person, but I'm not going to hold the space for myself, right? I'm not going to just let me be me. You know, often we do need a timeout on things and say, okay, I just need to not talk about this, or maybe I'm not the right person to talk about this with, as an example. When we're in being love, even if we're upset or angry about something, we are grounded and we are centered. We are aligned. You know that feeling that we got even today, like just that feeling right now with Sonya, as an example, where it's like there's a part of us that feels like it isn't quite attached, and we just, we align. Or when we were talking about the chakra, we just align with ourselves. Or that beautiful ceremony with love, like boom, you just connect in all your chakras. You just connect in all of your self, so that you're no longer out of alignment. I'm using the word alignment a lot, but I think you get what I'm saying. So that's what being love feels like. Even if we're upset about something, we can still be love. So the flavor of being love is holding space for people, but especially holding space for ourselves. Now, why this is important to leaders, can you imagine why this would be important to leaders? Because when we're leading people, even if it's just like whatever type of leader you are, and I'm going to tell you, every person here is a leader. Every single person here is a leader in some way. If you have children, you're a leader. If you have anybody in your life, you're leading them in some way. So we all have leader aspects. Everybody has somebody who is looking up to you. So so the importance of being love as being a leader is that we are then in alignment with ourselves, so that we're grounded, so that we're connected to ourselves, so that we can actually stay true to ourselves even when things are triggering or even when events are difficult. I mention that because what I do is I train facilitators to facilitate difficult events, which is sometimes workshops. When we're talking about being love, the thing that we have to avoid is our ego taking over. So does everybody understand the ego triangle? I'm sure everybody has heard of the ego, but there's actually this really powerful thing called the ego triangle. And the ego triangle involves three aspects. And those three aspects are the hero, which can be also considered the martyr, the bully, and the victim. So there's those three aspects of our ego can show up at any time. When I first learned to drive and I got my car, somebody said to me, oh, you've got a car, great. Can you pick me up at the airport on such and such a date? But I actually already had plans, but I hadn't found my voice yet. Like I still couldn't say what I needed. I still couldn't say no to people. I was totally over functioning in my life. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So then now I had this, this party that I really wanted to go to, and I still had to pick up my friend. So I went to the airport. My friend was late, like significantly late. And I was just waiting, and I was just thinking, and then I got into this whole cycle of thinking of like, oh my gosh, this is soul destroying. This is killing my plans. And I really was blaming my friend, which is what we do when we're inner ego, like especially when we're victim. So I went into victim. And then when my friend arrived, my friend's like, hey, and I'm like, because I was so frustrated about being late. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be at this party. So I acted all frustrated and upset. So I got to be two things on the ego triangle. I got to be a bully because I was really mean to my friend, actually. And I also got to be the victim, where I was all, and I went to the party late. So, so that's the ego triangle. And I'm sure you recognize when you've been on the ego triangle. Like if you think about the ego triangle and you think about where you live the most on the ego triangle, the reason that I'm asking is because isn't it beautiful to know where we are living, where we are coming from? Refolding towels, where could that fall under? That can fall under either victim, like, oh, they didn't do it right, I have to do everything. I'm in charge, I have to do absolutely everything. Or it can fall under bullying, like, you have to do it my way. So usually people have two aspects that they really rely on. Like, and some people really can live in one place. Most bullies don't realize that they have that whole victim thing going on. So it's really important to know where you're coming from and to start to discover what is the flavor of my seeking love. Is it victim? Is victim encompasses like neediness, blaminess, all that kind of stuff? Is it in the martyr? Do you feel like you have to do everything? Are you getting burnt out? Are you over functioning? Do you say yes when you really mean no? There's a whole book written about that. The importance is to know where you're coming from so that you can start to switch that. Now, if you want, I can send you a beautiful meditation on how to get yourself into being loved, and that's part of my offering. So now what do we do with this information? What do? We have to practice. We have to practice being love. So I want to teach you a communication style that is so powerful and it's so amazing so that you can use this to practice being love. This is like a total practice for being love. You can use it out loud when you speak to people, and it's very powerful, but you can also use it as a thought exercise. So it's called the 3-step communication process. The first step, yay, Melissa loves the 3-step communication process. She's like, yay. Okay, so the first step is I feel. The second step is I want. And the third step is to let go and find out what's next. So let me break it down. The first step is I feel. So what that means is that you speak from you. So instead of saying, I feel like you're being a big stupid jerk right now, right? That you would say instead, I feel frustrated. I feel upset. So now we're coming from I feel. It's an interesting shift to make because most people, because we're in a seeking love society, we're coming from you. I'm mad at you. I need you to do this. And often we're not coming from even feelings, not even coming from our feelings, but more like, I have to have it this way. So that's I feel. The second part is I want. It's like, this is what I want. And then people might think, well, if I want this situation to change, then what I need to talk about is how I want the situation to change. Like, I want you to pick up your socks and pick up your stuff and do the laundry on Saturdays. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the lifestyle cell. I want is a lifestyle cell. I want is what you want to intend in your relationships. I loved the way Love talked about intention, because that's what we want to talk about when we talk about the second step, which is I want, and then you fill it in. Because if the laundry's all done, then what do you get to do instead? I want us to be comfortable in a clean home, feel like we can just go out and do things because everything's done at home. I want to feel like I can just surrender to you like that. So you're creating a lifestyle cell. If you think about lifestyle cell like this, a lot of commercials aren't about, say, the car, right? It's not about the car, right? It's about the drive. It's about where you're going. So that's what I mean by lifestyle cell. Does that make sense to everybody? So, you picture like there was a car ad where somebody was just going and driving and picking up all the different friends. So what was the lifestyle? The lifestyle was fun and companionship. So now we can talk about what is the lifestyle cell for within that relationship. And you can bring that to any conversation. So now the third step is the hardest step. Like the third step is the most difficult step. And that step is when you shut up. When you just shut up and you listen to the other person. And even if your brain is going, this is wrong, this is going off the rails, this is not what I wanted, you still listen and you give it a shot. So how you might approach the third step is to say, what do you think? And then you hand it to them. Now, a lot of us might feel a compulsion to speak into that space. And I'm saying hold that space for the other person because you're holding that space for yourself. So let me give you an example of when I use this. I have a really good friend, and he and I have been friends for years and years. And there was a point one summer where he was really cranky with me several times, and I was starting to take it personally. Anyway, so we had gone out for dinner and he was cranky. And then I said at dinner, I feel like I feel like I'm missing this connection. I feel like I'm missing this joy. And what I want for us is to have laughs and do fun things together and really feel like we're communicating and connecting. So I'm paraphrasing what I said. And then I didn't say anything. I didn't say, what do you think? I just left it with him. And that was at the beginning of the dinner, and he ate his dinner and I ate my dinner, and he talked about a little this and that. And then we finished dinner, and then we paid for the bill, and then we went for a walk, and we walked for maybe 45 minutes. And then that's when his heart opened, and he told me that he was just heartbroken over something that had happened with his ex. I think she was getting married, and he had discovered it, and he was heartbroken. He was heartbroken. So that's what was coming out from his seeking love. His seeking love was like stingy at everybody and just like miserly with his feelings. So the important thing that I did was I didn't fill the space with all of my assumptions. You hate me. I've done something wrong. You are annoyed by me. Like, fill it with my childhood. You know what I mean? Fill it with my old stuff. I just waited him out. And it took about 2 hours before he opened up. And it can take longer. Sometimes people need to go away and chomp on it for a minute. But here's the thing, it's like once you've done the 3-step exercise, communication exercise, then you let it go. Like you really let it go. You said what you said, and you really let it go. You don't go back and like, hey, I just want to revisit. No, there's no revisiting. I can guarantee you they heard you. They heard you. Right? They heard you say what you needed to say. And also, when this comes back to being love, when we're in a state of being love, we can take the attention off of ourselves more easily. It's so much easier to take our attention off ourselves. And what I mean by attention off ourselves is like, when we have attention on ourselves, we're like, how do I look to this person? Does this person like me? What's going on? What does that mean? What did they mean by what they said just now? You know, like it gets into this morass of worrying and concept and all the stuff. So when we can get that attention off ourselves and we can just be love and hold the space for ourselves and hold the space for someone else, then it's a beautiful process. So the 3-step communication process can be practiced. You can use it in your journal. You don't even have to talk to someone about it. Listen, I truly believe you can resolve any issue with anybody. Even if they've passed on, you can write it out in your journal. You can work through it. It's never too late. As long as you're breathing, as long as you're alive, it's never too late to work something out, even if the other person is gone or the other person has ghosted you out, doesn't want to deal with it. You can still deal with it in your heart using this process. It's such a beautiful process. And it's such an amazing thought exercise. So that is the being love versus seeking love, holding space. You don't need to fake your orgasms. You can tell the truth about what's going on, right? And the 3-step communication process. So I want to thank you. Thank you for coming to my Sacred Body Talk.
Give yourself permission to be who you are. Here, right now. Be beautifully you. Express. Express. Express.
I am a shamanic tantrika. What that means is that I cultivate and harness our innate sexual and life-giving energy that isn't just about sex. It is the energy of creation itself. It is the energy that emanates all of life. In the tantric tradition, we have both the Shiva and Shakti energy. The Shiva being more of the masculine principle, which doesn't have to be a man because we embody both. We have both within us. But the Shiva is more of the void, is the blank canvas. It's the solid ground. And the Shakti, which is the feminine energy, which is the energy of creation, is breath of life. It's movement, it's sound, it's the wildness, it's nature, it's ocean, it's everything. It's us. And so when we start to embody that aspect of ourselves and bring them both into balance, really, because we are both. So bringing both being the solid, grounded, foundational force, where then we can also move with the rhythm of the universe. Then we can create the lives that we bring us the most pleasure, that bring us the most joy. So Tantra itself, where many people think, oh, it's about sex, it's actually about liberation. It's about your freedom. It's about who you came here to be. You didn't take a body just so that you can clock in, clock out, do mundane things. You came here to enjoy the juiciness of creation itself and to contribute to that. And so what I'm going to be doing today is sharing a little bit about the chakra system and how to activate it, how to open it. We're going to go on a journey and do that to help you clear any blocks that are in the way of your full expression. So many of you, I'm sure, have been doing this work for a long time, so you know what this is. So this is just a little bit of review. And just in case there's anybody who's still like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not really fully sure what that is, I'm going to go through it really briefly. And then we're going to go into it. So in the tantric tradition, there are more than 7 chakras, but the 7 are the ones we focus on for brevity. and it's the central channel of the body. So if you were to squeeze right now your PC muscles, your Kegels, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And while we do the exercise, we're going to be doing that too. We're going to be squeezing that. That part right there that you're feeling, that at the very base of your body is the root chakra. And the chakra just means wheel. It's a vortex of energy. It's the area that governs your foundation, your connection to the ground, your connection to your earth, to money, to home, to foundation. It's like very 3D material, physical pureness, very human. It's our hierarchy of needs. It's the very basics. And then the color that governs that is red. So I'll be bringing that up and activating that as we do it, but just kind of giving you the overview. Then we move up to the sacral chakra, which is going to be in your sex area. So the sacral chakra is the home of your emotions, the home of sensuality, of sexuality, of that level of movement, of getting in. So many of us get blocked in that area, especially when we think spiritual is just like, oh, and we think it's this. I love that Tantra brings in the body. It brings in the mind, the body, the spirit, all of it. It's all divine. So being able to tap into our emotions and knowing that there's wisdom in that and using that creative energy then to bring it onto the world is very beautiful. So if you're wanting to have more creativity in your life, whether it's for your work or your businesses or whatever it is that you're doing, or just, your own pleasure and play, your sacral chakra is an excellent place to activate that. So if you've shut down your sexuality, chances are you're also shutting down your creative expression. So it's something to think about. So then bringing that energy, we're going to go up to the solar plexus, which is going to be governed by the color yellow. And the solar plexus are around your belly button. It's your power center. So this is the location of your confidence, of your self-worth, your self-esteem. And oftentimes when we get into power struggles with other people, we'll feel it in our gut. We'll feel like, I don't, and our gut will also be like, I don't feel good about this. That's another way of like where we're giving our power away. So in our activation today, we're going to bring that back. And then we're going to bring the energy up to our heart chakra, your ability to give and receive love. And what blocks the heart chakra is grief, resentment, holding on to the past. So when you've heard the old adage of like forgiving others is about you. Well, it really is, because when you're holding on to past hurts, you're actually blocking your ability to not just give love to others, but to even feel and receive the love that's coming to you, that is available. So huge work to be able to let other people off the hook and forgive them and let them go, so that you can feel the love for yourself, so that you can feel the love that is in all things coming to you at all times, and be able to give that tenfold. And mind you, right now, more than ever, in the world that we're living in, with all of the division, with all of the pain, with all of the everything that's happening, love is the antidote. Love is the answer. So being able to not just feel it, but radiate that shit out is powerful medicine that's needed. So we're going to be tapping into that. And then we're going to come to our throat chakra, which is the color blue. And in this area is not just about being able to communicate your truth, but it's also about being able to hear and receive truth. So the creative energy that is born in your sacral chakra wants to be expressed through your throat chakra. So these two chakras are very much connected. So if you are having difficulties with orgasm, chances are you're having difficulties with expressing yourself and expressing your truth, what you want, what you don't want, what's okay. We want to be such people pleasers that we put ourselves to the side, and then it affects our ability to stand powerfully who we came here to be, and to even fucking feel pleasure at its fullest. So connected, learning how to say no, how to say ask for what you want, not just in the bedroom, but in the boardroom, powerful. And then we're going to come up to the third eye chakra, which is the color indigo. And in the third eye chakra, it's our ability to see the big picture, not just on a planetary level, but to be able to see beyond the veil. So that which is to come, the truth behind the things, beyond the illusion. So that's our psychic center, our ability to be able to intuit even more carefully what's actually happening and help you navigate your life so that you can make the moves you need to make for you and your family when you need to make them. And then we'll come up to the crown chakra, which is the color purple. And sometimes depicted as the color white, sometimes also depicted as a 1,000-petaled lotus. And this is the connection to all that is. So this is the reminder that we are one with all. There is no separation in the energy of creation. It is expressing itself in multiple. Oh, what else are you going to do with the whole of eternity? Is play the game of life and all the things in it, including you. So that's that part that reminds you, oh yeah, I am actually one with all that is. I am one with that divinity, and I'm just being human in this moment for that period. And so when I'm connecting to that part of myself that's beyond the 3D, then I remember that I can tap into all the creative solutions that are available to me. I can tap in with everything that is, because I am one with all that is. And when you remember that, then you are unstoppable, you are unfuckwithable, you are unlimited, and anything and everything that you want to do, be, and have is available to you. So we're going to go on a little journey now that you've got the little roadmap, and remember the squeezing of the Kegel. So as we go through this journey, I invite you to squeeze and bring that energy up through the central channel. So let's, I invite you, those of you who want to play along, close your eyes, sit somewhere comfortably with your hands on your lap. And as we start to take a deep inhale through the nose, I invite you to make an audible exhale. For the sound ah helps to relax the vagus nerve, letting your body know that you are not in fight or flight. You can release any tension now. We'll do that again. Breathing through the nose. Exhaling. And then on the next inhale through the nose, I want you to shake it off as you exhale audibly. Let something go. Inhale through the nose. Shaking it. And then continuing with the mouth closed, we're going to inhale through the nose to the count of 4, and then exhale to the count of 6. Inhaling through the nose 4. Exhale 6. Inhale through the nose 4. Exhale 6. And then this next inhale through the nose, I want you to inhale so deep you fill your belly, not just your lungs, with air. And then hold it at the top. And take in a little bit more air than you thought you could. Hold it at the top. Release out the mouth as if you're blowing out a straw. And then continue to inhale and exhale out of your nose slowly and deliberately. And I want you to envision a warm energy like honey, thick and gooey and soft above your head, starting to drip over your head, and as it goes, it releases any tension down your head and your neck and your shoulders and your back and your legs in your feet. And envision the energy going down your feet, beneath the floorboards, beneath you, beneath the layers of rock and sand and gravel, down beneath the plates that hold up the continents and the underwater oceans, underground oceans, and down through the layers of magma, all the way to the center of the earth, connecting at the core with the spirit of Gaia, the spirit of Pachamama, mother to us all, from whom we have come forth and to whom we will return our mortal coils. Feeling the connection with all of our brothers and sisters, the two-legged, the four-legged, the many-legged, the finned, the feathered, all the creatures that walk this beautiful planet, and observing how the plants and the animals and us will always have the shelter that we need, the food to nourish our bodies, the water, all of it provided for by our beautiful earth. What an honor to be a guardian of this planet. And as we feel rooted and grounded, we bring that energy back up through the core and the magma and the oceans and the layers of dirt and sand and gravel, back up through your feet, back up through your legs, back up. As we start to get closer to the root chakra, we start to activate our kegels, our PC muscles, as we squeeze and bring the energy up. And as we connect with the root of our body, we start to envision the color red as a wheel spins faster and faster at our roots. And as it spins faster and faster, I release all blocks and funk and junk and all that's in the way from your money, from your finances, from your foundation, from your home, from your security, from feeling rooted and grounded and protected on this planet. Bringing the energy up to your sacral chakra, starting to envision the color orange as it starts to spin faster and faster, removing every block and junk and funk and all that's in the way from your creative expression. We need your uniqueness on this planet. Do not hold back. Your emotions are guiding systems for when you are closer to yourself and when you are further away. Do not block them, feel them, heal them, and release them, and use them as the guideposts that they are. Release, release, release all funk and junk and blocks and all that's in the way of your sacred sexuality. You are human and divine. You are absolutely beautiful as the sacred feminine that you are. Embrace your sexuality, sensuality, and emotions, for they are holy, holy, holy. Bringing the energy up. Bringing the energy up to your solar plexus, starting to see the color yellow as you start to spin the wheel. Calling back all of the energy that you have ever given up to anyone, releasing any of your power, calling back and reclaiming your power in its entirety from anyone that you have given it to in any situation, from any love relationship or work relationship, from even from your family, from any of your own particular thoughts that may have gotten in the way and leaked your energy. I call that back forth now. Bringing the energy up from your solar plexus up to your heart. Starting to expand the heart chakra as you start to see the color green. So it goes faster and faster and faster, releasing all blocks and junk and funk and anything that's in the way from your love and opportunity to receive love and to feel it in its entirety and to give it fully and freely, releasing any grief that's in the way that's blocking your heart chakra. We need your love now more than ever. Bringing the energy up to your throat chakra, starting to see the color blue as it spins faster and faster and faster, releasing all funk and junk and blocks and all that's in the way from you expressing your fullness, your truth, what you need and what you want. Your boundaries are important, for as you express your boundaries, you say your no's, we can trust your yes. And as you are clear on what you are tolerating and what you're okay, then the universe knows what to bring you. And the more you say no and the more you say yes to what you really mean, the more you will have that in your life. May you be able to hear and see the truth of all situations. May you express it without doubting yourself. May you know who you are in your fullness, bringing the energy up to your third eye chakra, starting to see the color indigo as it spins faster and faster, releasing all funk and junk and blocks and all that's in the way from you seeing beyond the veil. For what you are experiencing and seeing in this moment is a creation of the past. Now you get to see what we are creating and building for the future so that you can remain focused on this present moment now, for this is the power point. From this point forward, we can create the life we want. If we are focused on what has been and what is wrong, we will create more of that. So focused on what it is that you do want to see, the life you do want to have, the planet we want to have, the systems and the governments that we do want to have, the way that we really want to be as a human race on this planet at this time. Bring your attention to that area and start to see it come forth and get the intuitive hit. And through this place of our third eye is where we will get the guided direction into what steps to make, who to call, what to say, what to do at what time, so that we can start to bring forth the new earth, bringing that energy up to the krancha bringing the energy up as you start to spin the purple wheel further and faster, releasing all blocks and junk and all that's in the way of you knowing the truth of who you are, connected to all that is. You have never been born and will never die. Your body is a temporary state of being, but you are eternal. Remember who you are. Rakashekiyata. Bringing that energy back up all the way beyond your crown chakra, up above the city that you're in and the state and the country and the planet, bringing that energy even further beyond the stars and the galaxy and the galaxies and the universe says, beyond the black hole, till you get to the place, 0 point. The void, before, during, and after all matter, in the space of pure consciousness, undivided, the place where matter is born, full and pregnant with the potentiality of everything. This space is also you. And calling forth from this space the guidance and the message that you've been waiting for and calling forth for how to shine even brighter your divine, sacred, feminine. For your medicine is holy and needed. And from this space, we see a light coming forward of that most evolved, peaceful, powerful, and grounded, wise, highest self of ours. And as she gets closer and closer, with nothing but love and compassion in her eyes, we begin to merge. As our DNA and every cell of our body accepts this goddess that we are. Breathe in deep. Hold. Exhale. And bringing that energy back down through the top of our heads and putting our hands to heart center at the bridge of our humanity and our divinity, knowing we are both and we are one. As we walk forward from this day forward, remembering that we are not alone. We've never been alone. We have the entire universe has our back, and we as sisters have each other in the highest and best way, with ease and with grace and for the greatest good of all. And so it is. And at your leisure, you can start to wiggle your toes and open your eyes. And you may feel some tingling in your body. We just did some deep cleansing and activating. And if you have a pen and a journal nearby, I recommend before any words, before going into any type of ego story, just going straight in to stream of consciousness, writing, drawing, whatever wants to come through to anchor in what you just experienced.
Thank you, Taina.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. There's no one coming to save us but ourselves. So this is a practice that you can do regularly to remind yourself that you've got you and that you are so much more than just this body, and that you can activate and clear yourself. And when you do this on the daily, watch out, world. You don't need to wait for anyone to hand you that crown. You know it. You got it.